Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the final week of coverage of the 2025 College League of Legends National Championships. From 32 teams down to 4, and we're about to whittle that down to 2 over the direction of the next 3 best of 5s in the next 2 days. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Hawk for our thrilling conclusion to our road to Raleigh. Hawk, it's good to be back on the show once again. Shout out to St. Clair and everybody else who is behind the scenes making this show possible. And we have 2 best of 5s today to determine who makes it to the finals in Raleigh and who also will be playing again tomorrow in that lower bracket final.
Yeah, the road ends here, Grapes. I mean, what a weekend it is to be a CLOL fan. Only 3 matches, but 3 matches between who everybody thought would be the big 4 at the start of the year. Former champions and 1 upstart are all that remains with eyes on the trophy, eyes on Raleigh. And it's going to start here as we can pull up the brackets because I want to immediately dive into the upper bracket, and then we can go to the lower. Maryville versus Ole Miss, the proverbial best team every single year, year in and year out, against Ole Miss, the upstarts in the bracket, the teams that have only been around for just a little bit of time. One of them gets the chance to go to Raleigh, and the other gets to go down to the lower bracket tomorrow to face the winner of the first match we have today. Maryville Ole Miss is later on after this series, but not before Winthrop and St. Thomas duke it out.
And you can see here, you might not have seen much of Winthrop and St. Thomas in that upper bracket graphic, and that's because they've been down here for a fair bit of time, both of them losing to Western Ontario throughout their first 2 rounds of competition, meaning that they had to go on a bit of an extended lower bracket run. For Winthrop, that meant starting down in lower round 2, playing against USF, Minnesota, St. Clair, Northwood, Western again, and then, of course, into this matchup. Whereas St. Thomas lost to Western in the second round, meaning that they had to beat Purdue Northwest in a 5-game series, UHSP in 4, Fisher in 3, which means that we're suddenly seeing them getting better and better, scaling up for this ultimate matchup.
Yeah, I mean, both these teams have been really scaling throughout the tournament. I mean, if we look at the run for Winthrop through the lower bracket, yeah, they got sent down early, but Grapes, they've only dropped 2 games since then, 1 to Minnesota, 1 to Northwood. And not only that, I mean, I think outside observers would say this team's not just not dropping games, but they're playing better both here and CLOL, but also looking at their run over in the NACL, taking a series off of near airport. Definitely an unprecedented win, and one that maybe puts the rest of the bracket on notice for Winthrop University. But Grapes, like I said, these 4 teams, Ole Miss, Maryville, Winthrop, and St. Thomas, were the 4 that everybody had on their radar coming into this year. And after an incredibly turbulent run, upsets to Western, other teams rising up and challenging Purdue Northwest, going to 3, or rather to 5 against UST, it is these teams that remain at the end of the line. And I mean, we would not want it any other way because we truly do feel that these are the 4 absolute best. The new bracket as well, paying them dividends and opportunity to showcase everything they've got to make it to this point.
And these are 2 teams that have been to the top before. St. Thomas in 2022 and 2023, Winthrop back in 2021 in that online format. Both of them beating Maryville in certain instances in that national championship as well. But let's take a look at what the prizing does look like for if these teams do potentially make it into that national finals. Everybody so far has earned themselves a bit of that prize pool of the teams that we have left today standing. Just matters, and the more you win, the more you potentially can earn in terms of scholarships for your school.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want to keep going for that scholarship money, and then also, again, for the glory. That is what it's all going to be about. Only the top 2 make it to Raleigh, and that's what this weekend of games is going to be all about. But Grapes, let's zoom in to this matchup specifically. We've already been talking a little bit about it. Winthrop against UST, winning championships from 2021 to 2023, with only their runs getting interrupted, both of them, by St. Louis University last year. UST has never finished worse than 3rd in the national championship. They want to continue that here today, but Winthrop, they're wanting to rise with this roster that they've had now for 3 years. They've not made it past top 4, and you know it's on the forefront of their minds.
And when you think about Winthrop, you think about a team that always is contesting towards the top of collegiate, whether it was their performances in the lands over the past couple of years, whether it's for their performance, of course, in the tier 3 to tier 2 spaces, or even, in their conference play or leading into the national championships. But somehow, some way, the past couple of years have not been super kind to them. They have not even made it back to a finals, to a LAN weekend in terms of the collegiate CLOL proper. But they, of course, want to change that narrative, and momentum might be on their side. Let's take a look at their full lineup for today, entering this best of 5. No Artemis this time around, which I think is a good thing. He'll just be coaching behind the scenes. Denethor, Wilson, Sword, Mobility, and only 35. As you mentioned, Hawk, 4 of the 5 members of this roster have been a part of the team for now the last year and a half.
Yeah, and 2 of them, Mobility and Denethor, having been a part of that team for basically 3 years, starting their runs in 2023, and they are the headliners of the show still. The young and impressive talent on the squad, Denethor, Mobility, expectations on them to really step up. They were the ones that did it against Near Airport last week, but oftentimes not the ones that are played around. Wilson and Sword oftentimes taking a lot of the early game priority. And while we've seen a lot of good play from them throughout their tenure on this squad, it does feel that is sometimes where some of the inconsistency can come from. And the question with Winthrop for me this year has always been, what kind of form are they going to show up on? Because when their game plans are good and everybody's having a good individual day, Winthrop is always a team that has become more than the sum of their parts and that can beat really anyone. But it's when they play individualistic and they don't seem to have a clearly defined way that they want to play the game, which happens more than I would really like. That is when Winthrop can truly struggle.
And we saw those struggles, especially towards the middle of the year and even leading into the CLOL bracket that kind of culminated in their loss to Western Ontario in that first round. A bit of an unexpected loss for them, but apparently it seems like those guys have locked in from there. They have to go on the longest possible run to make it into the CLOL finals to get themselves another trophy, but they are already well on their way. As we can take a look at their opponents today, who they will be facing up against. It is the 2-time CLOL champions, the University of St. Thomas.
Yeah, and with a very different roster, Porsche being the only one with double rings, and Nova back in the coaching role as Trevor, who was benched in Game 5 against Purdue Northwest and did not play last weekend during the remainder of UST's lower bracket run, is back into the lineup. And if we're expecting Mobility to be a focal point for this Winthrop team, bottom lane is going to be a huge question because Array has been brilliant for this team. Ever reliable, ever efficient. Grapes, a player that we think really highly of. But how are him and Trevor going to function together in the 2v2? Because that's been a pain point for UST throughout their run when Trevor has been playing. And they're going to need to be on their A game against Mobility and only 35.
We've seen some support substitutions in and out over the last couple of series for St. Thomas in the their culmination of their lower bracket run. Nova came in for a little bit. We knew that they were potentially trialing some other players that are currently part of their school, but they decided on locking in for Trevor, at least for the beginning of this series. And this is a guy that has a lot of experience at the support position, has been in the NACL, and can definitely be a ceiling raiser for this team if he is able to perform alongside Array. And for this UST roster as well, the fact that all of the other 3 teams remaining in the CLOL bracket are teams that play together in the NACL. They play together in other leagues in Tier 2. UST only has CLOL right now, so at this point, when they're locked into that top 4, they're going to be putting their absolute focus onto this to make sure they have the best chance to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I know you got to talk to Bradley before the series today. Shout out to you, Graves, for getting a couple of interviews done for our top 4 teams. And, Bradley said he felt like that this team has come together over the last week or so. We think back, to the St. Louis run that ended both these teams' roads last year. And they kind of did something similar, right? Where they were really struggling throughout their season, but they brought it together at the end and obviously created a magical run that culminated in a trophy. And maybe St. Thomas can do the same thing. It's going to start here against Winthrop. Before we get into the draft, though, do want to talk a little bit more about some of the individual lanes because we highlighted the importance of bottom lane, which I think immediately that's going to be where my questions lie for the series is how effectively can Array and Trevor keep up, but also looking elsewhere. Porsche against Denethor. Porsche historically has struggled to keep up with players of the caliber of Denethor, and I want to see if that's going to happen in this series. But on the other side of the coin, we mentioned Winthrop's propensity to play through Wilson and Sword in the early game. They're against Kenvy and Bradley, players that have been at the top of tier 2 and players that I think can give UST an advantage. So we'll see if St. Thomas can use their mid jungle to maybe put a stop to the game planning that Winthrop needs to be successful.
And with that being said, we are on to the draft for game number 1. A quick reminder to everybody, CLOL is being played on 25.8. That is the patch before the Spirit Blossom update. So you might have been watching leagues like the NACL, the LTA, which is starting, I think, right about now, as well as the LPL, LCK, etc. They're all playing on the live patch. They're all playing with the grub timers at 8 minutes, the new Otacon, etc. We are going to be on the old-fashioned patch for the duration of this tournament. That means that 2 spawns of grubs will be happening, Rift Herald at 15 minutes, 2 potential Otacons, as well as a bunch of other champion picks that can be prioritized or not. Heading into that first pick phase, it looks like an early Azir could be the focus for Winthrop University. This is something that can give Sword a little bit of priority, but it is very different than what we have traditionally seen in the draft.
And the Victor counterpick for Bradley, look, it does have an advantageous lane matchup, and it's something that Bradley is so damned good on. But I will say, Grapes, it does give playmaking potential over to Winthrop. We've seen Azir's in this matchup. Hit level 6, immediately try to go for the flash on the Victor, and then you come back, a couple minutes later when the shuffle's back up and try to take him down. Obviously, without the Vi on the table, it does mean some sort of other playmaker for Wilson's going to come through. Xin Zhao, very strong. Definitely just trading power picks so far. And I think, interestingly, immediately we highlighted potential importance of mid-jungle. Neither one really getting draft resources from either side. I actually really like this from Winthrop. Also, a lot of focus towards hyper carries. Ivern, Callista, Varus, Lucian, right? Both teams, I think, respecting how massive bottom lane is going to be in this series, and Winthrop just giving over the freest R5 support counterpick and R3 top lane counterpick of all time right here. We'll see what they opt for.
Yeah, and maybe it's kind of calling the bluff of UST, seeing if they really do have a severe counter into this Gwen. It looks like it's going to be the Ambessa for Porsche to go into it, so can be a little bit hit or miss, kind of, I think, relatively matchup up in the top lane that Denethor can be able to control if he, utilizes his range advantage. This is a player that is very comfortable on this Gnar. We've seen him pop off on it as as far away as 2022, as recently as this tournament. So this is definitely something that they're comfortable with, and a strong top side for Winthrop as we head into the second phase of bans.
Yeah, I kind of like a game 1 Gnar blind here for Denethor, just because I think if the expectation is, hey, I'm a little bit better than Porsche, let's test the water. Let's go for a comfort pick that is useful in like most team styles and just see if Porsche can beat it. And so I'm really down with this skill check. Obviously, Porsche on the Ambessa gonna have a lot of agency, a lot of dive coming through from UST so far. I think something like a Kaisa could potentially make a lot of sense here for Array. His Ezreal getting respect banned away, though, is definitely a good option. We've seen how good Array can be on this one. I will say on the dive front, Kaisa not a champion I particularly associate with Array, so I would be curious to see if that is what they go for, and it just ends up getting banned anyway.
So bot lanes left to be selected here for both of these teams. I feel like Array and Mobility is going to be one of our matchups to watch. We highlighted it going into this game. Now they're going to get the opportunity to lock in some champions that they think can work the best against each other in the 2v2. I imagine engaged supports are going to be the priority as well for both Only35 and Trevor. We're not on that new patch where the lanes still are very short. It means that we are likely going to have, early rotations up to the grubs, early team fights as soon as, we get to that 6-minute mark. As the Misfortune is what's going to get locked in for Array, has been very, very popular just in terms of a champion that can provide a lot of AoE damage in those team fights.
Yeah, it's pretty safe. I don't hate it. It has a lot of ability to follow up on the burst and the dive from long range that UST is bringing. But I will say, Gnar, Azir, especially Xin Zhao, they don't care too much about the bullet time of Mobility going for his Ashe. This has been a recent favorite of Mobility's. We've seen him pop off on this pick in the NACL. Has been pretty much automatic with Ashe arrows over the course of time. And now the pick of tank supports, you mentioned it. I think both these players, tank support players at heart. I will say, though, both Only35 and Trevor, not strangers to cooking when the situation demands it. Obviously, not fearless draft here means perhaps the situation won't demand it. with the Braum, just a great option alongside the Ashe. You get that double Freljord bot lane. It's a really strong 2v2. It's comfort for mobility. You've already got a decent amount of initiation with the Azir, Narns, and Zhao. And I'm going to be honest, really balanced compositions on both sides. But I think if you are not able to get this top side going for UST with a lot of that single target dive, I think it's going to be very difficult to team fight into just a stalwart Winthrop composition.
Yeah, I think I do like the damage profile that UST do have. You know, they have really strong backline carries. They have players on the front line that can go for engages and can go for single target like pickoffs to like they have just immediate go buttons with all of their ultimate abilities. Whereas on the other side for Winthrop, you have the ability to scrap a little bit. I think specifically this mid jungle 2v2 between Wilson and Sword is going to be very important. It's been a pairing for Winthrop that has gotten a lot of attention and a lot of focus. And you mentioned that ability to just consistently ult the Victor on timer, try to burn the summoner spell, and then come right back to that lane. I think that is going to be very important here for Winthrop if they want to win this game.
And that's going to be the question, too, is how much can Winthrop make the mid lane volatile? Because I look at the side lanes and there's some volatility here and there, but I'm really more expecting the mid lane to be that focus early on into the game. And I think to add importance to the mid jungle as well, both these mages are the only magic damage on either side, and a lot of Ninja Tabby value on both sides. We got Xin Zhao, Gnar, and Ashe. We got Misfortune, Ambessa, and Vi. Like, everyone wants to build the steel caps. So if one of these mages falls behind, that actually could really harm your damage profile. And I think Bradley and Sword actually have a ton of carry potential. Now, in terms of name value, who I'm looking at to step up in the team fights, I do favor Bradley. So again, Winthrop, can they make something volatile? Can they put pressure on Bradley to have push in mid, to be able to move first to those neutral objective fights that, to your point, I think are going to be really important for both sides, just because, especially after level 6, I think both teams have a lot of ability to team fight early on in the game and try to take these 3v3s, 5v5s.
Once again, it's an elimination best of 5 down in the lower bracket semifinals. Winthrop have gone all the way from losing in that first round to potentially clinching a spot to Raleigh if they win 2 more series this weekend. But it starts right here against the 2-time champions, 2022 and 2023, have never finished lower than top 3 overall in CLOL. It's Winthrop. It's UST. Game 1 starts right now.
And UST has been announced by Nova that this might be the last ride for their program. A magical 4 years it has been, 2 trophies in that time, and a very narrow top 3 exit last year. You know that they want to get back to the top, a retooled roster. Grapes, many people looked at this team and thought they'd be top 2 coming into the year, and they were top 2 in the CLOL Hub polls basically every week. But now, Winthrop University soaring over the last couple of weeks. You know that they want to take down their old South Conference rivals. For those that remember 2022, the last time that these two teams met at full strength was in the South Conference Finals when UST took a 3-1. They've never played in the CLOL National Championship, and now here it is, last chance saloon for both sides in 2025.
And it's pretty surprising that we have that level of separation between 2 squads that, of course, have won CLOL in the past and also are, you know, teams that are so storied in terms of their histories and in terms of what they've been able to do in collegiate. But for Winthrop and UST, it's no time like the present to face off against each other in this do or die best of 5. As early on, the mid lane is going to be our focus, as we mentioned. We see our junglers pathing towards top to bottom, try to impact potentially what could be a volatile matchup between probably the 2 biggest stars that we have in terms of the lane matchups and the lane assignments in Array and Mobility. You can already see that Ashe Braum doing some work.
Yeah, great trading from Array and Mobility. Most importantly, getting push on the wave. Early Dragon's going to be so important. Obviously, again, we're not on that patch where there's only the 1 spawn of grubs, right? We do still get the 2 pots at 6 minutes and then 3.5 after that. So, you know, does mean playing towards the top side could be more valuable mobility.
Woo. Almost going down there. Trevor had to pop the heal. Still got to below 100 HP. And that's a good sign here for mobility and only 35. Again, this bot lane has been one of the strong points for Winthrop in terms of their recent success in the NACL, leading into the CLOL bracket as well. And it's on these picks like the Ashe where you can be very oppressive in the laning phase with these volleys and Trevor on the Rakan not going to be able to do too much in terms of going all in on them.
And I mean, I really like this 2v2 already for mobility and only 35. Again, this is really going to be a question, is how well does Trevor play early on? Because, I mean, to be quite frank, we know mental can be a factor for this player as well, right? So we want to see success from UST out the gate from their bottom lane, but Winthrop definitely going to want to try to mitigate that. And let's remember, Winthrop gave over the R5 counter pick in this role, but the Ashe Braum just so strong in the 2v2. UST opted for the Rakan, which is just more of that engage style of champion, something that can follow the Vi instead of playing for that 2v2 in the draft. And Winthrop taking full advantage of that fact, but gank in mid.
Early gank from Kenvi after completing that full clear. Nicely done by the UST top laner, or as a jungler, I should say, forcing the flash out of Sword, as it'll be just trade of those objectives across the map. Scuttles top for UST, bot lane here for Winthrop, which is where they do possess a lot of that power, as we've been talking about.
But a good move from Kenvi. We talk about making mid lane volatile. Sword without the flash, not really going to feel comfortable when that level 6 comes through to go in onto Bradley, unless they know for a fact that the Vi is not around. So really nicely done, relieving pressure on the Victor, allowing Bradley to play however he wants, already opening up a pretty minor CS advantage, but could continue to grow.
So a bit of a slow start early on, other than that one summoner spell. We do see an aggressive movement from Wilson into the enemy jungle, knowing that Kenvi is on a back after clearing that ward up on the top side. Denethor going to keep himself safe here, as we see some early aggression, as looks like Wilson wants to join in on this gank towards Bradley. They're going to force a flash, pull off the exact same move that was done to Sword.
And so great move right there. Wilson immediately able to strike back, taking advantage of that reset that you highlighted, Grapes, and blowing the flash off the Victor. That's really big, because that does mean as soon as level 6 comes online for Azir, Bradley is in danger. It's going to demand more time hovering mid lane from Kenvi and Trevor. And, I mean, Bradley going to have to be on his game, cannot overextend for minions when the Xin Zhao is potentially around.
Yeah, and, you know, one of the good things about being able to cover, like, these matchups that have happened and been played over and over again is you know all the little intricacies now that can become possible in terms of the matchups, in terms of what the 2v2 can do, in terms of finding ganks onto each other. Because once we get into the late game, we know that Victor and Azir, Bradley and Sword are going to be very important to the team's success in those team fights. And, you know, kind of seeing what they can do early to provide a little bit of impact is going to be big as well. We have those grubs spawning in 20 seconds, but it looks like neither of our bot lanes want to roam up there. At least for now. We're seeing a reset coming through from Array and Trevor. We'll see if they want to now go for this play, although it is a little bit delayed.
UST gonna have a lot of prio for these grubs. Bradley was able to hold a freeze after the gank. Sword was just too low to step up 1 versus 1. And Wilson, as a level 5 Xin Zhao, not a lot he can do about it. So Bradley denied an entire wave of minions. Sword is down XP, and Kenvi knows it.
Yep, looking for this gank. Sword, no flash, but he's trying to bait a little bit because he knows that Wilson is here. When becomes lightning comes out just to give a little bit of a love tap before they head over to that potential skirmish around the grubs. As also mobility and only 35 coming up through mid, while Array is still getting another wave in down bot. So Winthrop will have the numbers advantage around the top side.
Yeah, Kenvi and Trevor still poking around. Sword has critically hit that level 6. Really important for this Azir, and items are relatively even, so the CS doesn't matter too much. Only 35 is down a level, but think Winthrop should have the priority to go for these grubs with Denethor moving down and nearly having Mega. But maybe not.
Array now rotating up. Mobility actually made his way back down to the bot lane here. So grubs are going to be started up by UST, and it looks like there's not going to be a contest for the first spawn of them right here. As Bradley now making his way up here as well. UST definitely have the numbers advantage and should be able to take these rather easily.
Yeah, Ray all the way up. And Bradley just trading so well in mid. Again, having a health bar lead over Sword, having a level lead. Maybe Wilson can take one, but no, Kenvi just has the smite, and Winthrop's got to be careful here.
Yeah, Kenvi, he's trapped here in the pit. In comes Denethor from over the wall with the Gnar ultimate. That's first blood picked up for Winthrop, and only 35 looking for more. Flashing forward, trying to land the concussive blows onto Trevor and Array. It'll force a lot of summoner spells, a lot of resources, and the kill will go over to Winthrop.
A pretty good move right there from Winthrop, as great target selection and decisiveness on the fight from Denethor and Wilson, and they get the kill. Not only that, in a 4 versus 5, losing no one. Mobility, free time in bottom to get plates and a wave, meaning Winthrop wins the gold trade despite losing the objective.
And that kill going over to Wilson is going to help him continue to snowball in the jungle role, and Winthrop off to a good start despite the fact that they lose those 3 grubs. A little bit of a missed timing there. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time we'd see a team like Winthrop, like, they sent their bot lane up mid. Maybe they wanted to go rotate for those grubs earlier, but instead, they were a little bit late to the play, but it still ended up working out. Arrow comes out from mobility, but not going to find Bradley.
I mean, I think that the call just is we don't want to sack gold on mobility because we know how good this guy can be in team fights, right? So we're going to soft contest for the grubs, but if UST walks up as 5, we don't care about the objective. But for the Eagles to still find an angle to get a kill out of it, I mean, that's huge. And now Bradley, still no flash.
Yeah, he gets shuffled in by Sword. That's the combo that we were talking about. Only 35 comes in, and Wilson picks up kill number 2.
Yeah, that's just exactly what we talked about. How can we put pressure on this Victor when he's got no flash? Trevor and Kenby were out of position. Only 35 makes the roam happen, and this is going to give Winthrop priority setup around the Dragon. Now, not willing to start it without bot push means UST can still mount a contest, but
Denethor was in a lot of trouble if that public execution did connect, but Porsche unable to land that ulti. And so Denethor is going to survive for now. He's taking up the Mega, so should be fine. That was very close, and honestly, a situation that Porsche could have gotten himself a solo kill onto Denethor.
Denethor didn't have flash either. I mean, I think that was just a miss from Porsche, to be honest, on the public execution. Maybe Denethor, we could call it skill, but I'm going to call it luck right there. And ends up just being 10 CS ahead, and no harm, no foul for the top laner of Winthrop.
And again, that's a matchup that we're favoring Denethor in, but Porsche is somebody who also, so many wins, so much experience here for UST. One of the few players in history to have 2 collegiate titles. He could try to get his way towards a 3rd as well, but it starts here with a win. And he's always been somebody who's a really nice weak side player, but you know, what would be the next step for a player like Porsche is being able to take those solo kills against somebody like Denethor.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of good individual flashes from Porsche, but Denethor is definitely someone we hold in high regard as Bradley under threat.
Oh, great arrow. It lands on a Bradley, just completely cutting him off. And Wilson picks up the kill. That's his 3rd of the game. Really nicely done in the mid-jungle by Winthrop, and they're the ones with that early lead in the Feats of Warfare.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Mobility's got a nice Ash. It's not about the team fights, but the arrows. He is automatic on these men. Able to find Bradley, who had the flash, but just ends up going down. Winthrop up to a 2,000 gold lead just off of superior early to mid-game team fighting. It's Wilson with all of the kills on the Xin Zhao, which I will say not exactly ideal, but it will just make these early skirmishes that much better for the Golden Eagles. And we talked about the importance of some of these potential early scraps that were to come through, and Winthrop just on the front foot so far.
And when you look at what the late game damage profiles look like for UST, it's very much indexed into Bradley and Array, this Victor MF combo. Xin Zhao has a great time into that. You pop the Crescent card, all the long-range damage just suddenly doesn't mean anything, and you can just focus on taking down the front line one by one or peeling for the rest of your carries, which is going to be a really big situation for Wilson. And so giving him those kills, not the worst thing in the world. It's really going to help Winthrop bridge their way into the late game stages here. As we do have our second spawn of grubs. Reminder, we are on patch 25.8. As it's UST once again the one to start it up. However, Denethor has teleport and mobility is on the top side.
Denethor does still need to stack Mega, but that's a 3-0 Xin Zhao. UST paying respect to Sword's push as well in mid.
They will at least get one, so that will be the advantage in terms of grubs going over to UST, but Winthrop will be able to get the next 2. It will mean that there's no feats of monster slaying picked up here by UST on that second spawn of the grubs, so things currently tied at 1 apiece. Overall, though, Winthrop have the advantage here in this game number 1. A lot of questions coming in for both of these squads coming through the lower bracket. I think a lot of people probably going into the tournament would have favored UST based off of the lack of performance we've been seeing from Winthrop, but I think we're seeing, Hawk, that NACL momentum is carrying over here into CLOL.
Yeah, I mean, Winthrop really just has looked revitalized. Again, just solid team play so far, and that's really what we've been seeing in NACL as well, where it feels like they're just much more clear about how they want to approach team fights, and they've not been having as many individual struggles, which I do think is something that plagued them just a little bit in sort of their doldrums of the season. if you will. But I mean, Winthrop just kind of winning everywhere right now. They've got a CS in top and mid and jungle. Bot is marginally behind by just like a wave or so, and Mobility going to be able to pick up some of this under the top lane tier 1. They've got all the kills, and they've been able to deny the grub stacking as well as take the first dragon. If we look at how Winthrop wants to execute upon a really solid mid-game teamfight composition that also scales pretty damn well, like, this is really all you can ask for. And I look at UST later on, you talk about how it's going to be on this Victor and Misfortune. I feel like UST struggles if they're not able to get a really hard engage.
Well, now UST, they're going for the engages. An invade might go awry. The Crescent Guard blocking the entirety of the bullet time, so Wilson's staying alive, but here comes the collapse. Denethor is in. Nars the bot lane into the wall, and now it's an array flashing away. Wilson going after Kenvi, who has to flash as well, but he will not escape the wrath of the Xin Zhao. Public Execution goes on a sword, and Porsche has arrived. It's an all-out brawl on the UST side. Jungle. Chaos Storm goes in onto Wilson. It's a double kill picked up here for Bradley, and UST are going to be able to punish this overextension and pick up 3 kills for themselves.
Yeah, and this is part of the problem that we have seen from Winthrop still in their struggles, which is they can get roped into just going too aggressive. They generate a lead, but then they make a disrespectful move. And Mobility, speaking of disrespectful, that's just greed, man.
He does have both of his summoner spells. Trevor could go over. Grand Entrance does come out. Barrier will save him, and now only 35 can try to turn this into an advantageous situation now for Winthrop. Concussive Blows lands on to Array, and Sword has arrived. It will be the Misfortune going down to the Azir, and a shutdown goes the way of Sword. And so Mobility, playing bait a little bit, is able to get Winthrop something back.
It does cost him his summoners, but Array does go down. Sword can be happy to pick up something on the back end, but overall, it's an extended 4-4-2 in favor of the Lions. Great claps from UST. They simply had their numbers faster. Even the teleport from Denethor was not quick enough to save the fight. Porsche able to arrive late, and UST closing the gold gap to about 1,000 as we can take another look. It's simply Winthrop going too far forward, but I just been talking about UST really wants to go first, and they one-shot only 35 in the fight. So even with the arrival of this Meganar, it's still really a 3 versus 4. They chase onto Wilson, but by the time he dies, or rather Kenvi, Sword's already gone, right? And UST has been able to consolidate their battle lines, and Winthrop forced to scatter.
And yeah, I don't know why Winthrop decided to go for that move around
they skip steps, you know? And that's what we've seen from them a little bit.
And now Denethor might be in a little bit of trouble too. No flash available, and 3 members of UST collapsing here on this bottom side. Gonna take some sort of grand escape to come out of this. The ulti comes through from Porsche. Under the tower they go, but it's not gonna matter. Beautifully juggled tower aggro to keep Trevor and everybody on UST up and healthy.
It's not the end of the world for Winthrop as they do take the top lane tier 1 and trade. That's Feats of Warfare.
Going in onto Array. That is an easy kill, as Array also didn't have his summoner spells. So Mobility popping the thumbs up emoji, and he's finally on the board here in this game 1.
Yeah, Mobility, I mean, just another good Ashe arrow. Great timer onto Array. Cannot step up like that when he doesn't have cover on mid against an Ashe without cleanse. And so Winthrop are able to trade the kills, and they get the extra tower, so it ends up being an Eagles advantageous play despite UST starting it off.
And that is a good sign here for Winthrop, knowing that they're able to rebound nicely after what was a bit of a mistake going for that invade onto the enemy red buff. But now they have a lot of vision control over the top side. The Rift Herald is available for them to take, as well as this Hextech Dragon, which was briefly started up here by Winthrop, but I think they know. And actually, they burned the teleport from Bradley, which will now force UST to go for the objective.
And Denethor is losing on the top side of the map right now. It's at least one wave that will die. Needs to stack up Mega on something as well. UST, they're just going to take this. Winthrop a little bit flat-footed on the map right now. They wanted to fight for it, but UST, great fast play to just rip it before Denethor could hit Mega.
And it feels like overall Winthrop should have maybe just prioritized taking that Rift Herald. They look at all the wards that are currently in their topside jungle. They have Denethor pushing out, and they will be able to take it, but it comes at the cost of maybe just losing some time, losing a wave that maybe Denethor could have picked up for himself. So it's these small things that we're hoping to see Winthrop clean up, but overall they still are in a good spot.
Yeah, and again, we talk about the importance of game planning for Winthrop. It is still small things like that. I think just like not the best macro, like you said, could have been more efficient, but ultimately it's fine, right? And they're right back out to their 2K gold advantage. And I think they're going to be pretty happy with their position in this game. I think the more important things to me are that Bradley picked up 2 kills in those extended plays, in those team fights earlier. he's stacking up a Roa here on the Victor, which is a build that we have seen gaining more and more popularity. You know, Roa, Riftmaker, Leandries, a lot of that dot and just consistent damage. We talk about UST's composition really needing to get burst down. It is going to help out somewhat having just this really tanky Victor that can deal out consistent DPS.
And while the damage might not be as much early, as we get later into the game, once that Roa continuously stacks up, once Bradley, has a level advantage over Sword, for instance, after picking up that extra level up from when the Roa hits max stacks, that's when the Bradley Victor damage is really going to start to come in here. But for now, it actually really will be a Winthrop advantageous map because, for the side of UST, their skirmishers, they've done all right for themselves, but the main carries are the ones that need a couple of items before they can really get going.
I don't think UST is under too much pressure because it's not like Winthrop's carries have that many items either. Only a kill each on Sword and Mobility as okay. There's a
the
play
arrow!
Bradley.
Bradley barely able to dash away from that one. Sword forcing the flash out of Bradley's Victor by using the Emperor's Divide very smartly, actually, not using his. That means that next time that cooldown is available, they can go right back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, I mean, Sword recognizing that the kill is not nearly as important as the summoner spell because Winthrop gets what they came for, which is that tower. I actually really like that force from them on bottom. It looks aggressive. TP, all expended just to get the flash off the Victor, but they get another tower, and now this is going to allow them to just play for push on sides and then collapse towards mid lane to try to knock down this last outer turret of UST, and it'll force the Lions to potentially over-index into defending that. I mean, UST, they've not gotten any towers, so map control at the very least in favor of Winthrop, even if their, big carry items that we talk about for these team fights haven't come online quite yet.
And I think just with the extra utility that Sword and Mobility have, they're going to be useful even at this stage of the game, especially to back up somebody like Wilson, who's already at 2 completed items on this Incel. The Thunder Sky and the Steric Gauge going to keep him healthy as well as allow him to dish out a good amount of damage here in some of these mid-game skirmishes, and having things like the Enchanted Crystal Arrow and the Emperor's Divide that, Sword will have the flash advantage over Bradley now. Like, that's going to provide a lot around potential fight around this next dragon, which is spawning in about 2 minutes' time.
Every time I see Winthrop fogging with push into side lane, I'm just waiting for Mobility to unleash an Ash Arrow, man. I mean, I love the way he plays the Ash because my philosophy with this champion is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think Winthrop is one of the best teams at this level of play that I see that is just willing to continuously just look for angles. Because why not throw it out, right? You might get a pick and you might be able to convert that into something more. And Winthrop going to use that threat to start up this Otacon. Again, not much map control to speak of for UST. Even if Winthrop can't stick this, you can potentially force St. Thomas to overextend somewhere and find a pick onto one of their squishy members.
They end up peeling off of it. Again, not a great idea to be taking that solo, especially when you're not fully kind of around each other here, but looks like things are going to be okay here. It was the Voracious Otacon, which means that we will get those false lives. One of the last times, Hawk, we're going to see the GAs in game as we some of the last series that we're going to get here on this Noxus themed patch. But that it does mean it's very important for whoever picks it up to, secure this objective, because it's going to mean just so much impact, specifically around this game-breaking point, which is when some of these major objectives are going to spawn. If you take some of those false lives and use them to your advantage, it can result in a big swing of gold for your team.
2 items on basically everybody that matters with 2 team fight-oriented compositions. Winthrop summoning up the Herald on the wave before this Dragon. UST a bit out of position late on their reset here.
So they will be late to the play, but they can start. They have the go button, very much so, with all 3 of their engagers. Porsche, Kenvi, and Trevor all have their flash, and that will be
no Mega on
impactful.
Denethor again. He's mismanages Mega a little bit this game, I think, Grapes. He's got to go bot and stack this up, but the threat of the fight is pulling him towards the river, and so Denethor not really in the best position to fight for this.
And Bradley's top lane. He has to burn that teleport if they want to try to go for the fight, but it's going to be a little bit too late.
He's just
the
gone.
Dragon goes down. Kenvi going to try to get into the pit, make it a 50-50. The arrow lands onto Array. Kenvi's in the pit. It could be that Smite fight, but it's secured by Wilson. And now the fight will begin in earnest. Bullet time coming out. Public Institution does not connect and flashes away from everybody. Will allow for Winthrop to stand tall. Emperor's Divide finds 2. Trevor's the first casualty. And Array's already burned his flash, going to get collapsed upon by the rest of the Golden Eagles. It's a double kill in for Wilson. And Winthrop win the fight in the Drake.
Wilson getting all the kills, and that's probably going to be an Otacon going their way as well. Winthrop is just fighting really nicely around these neutral objectives as UST was late for the play. The Dragon went away, but then they decided to rip it anyway, and I cannot co-sign that play.
If you got the Dragon and then maybe we're synced up a little bit more, could have worked out potentially for UST, but just not the best timer here for them. They might try to contest this Otacon, but it will be secured easily as Kenvi is now in range to smite that away. So the false lives in hands. UST know that even if they do go for a fight, it won't result in any kills. Take another look at this replay.
I mean, this was just not a good engage. Once the Dragon's gone, UST can just walk out here, but Kenvi just goes on to Denethor for what? Public execution misses, and we said if UST cannot find a good instant engage, it is not a good fight for their style of composition, and that was just not it at all. I would hope for more from a player of the caliber of Kenvi. Maybe a bit of panic in game one from the UST jungler as they come up absolutely empty-handed right there, giving over a big advantage to Winthrop. Now up a little under 4,000 gold with the Voracious Otacon. We've already talked about how much map control Winthrop has. They can just walk into UST's jungle, deny all the wards, and then rip a fight once this Baron spawns in 2 minutes if they want.
I mean, and you saw the power from Wilson on this Inso there, right? Like the usage of that Crescent Guard blocked out
really
the
good champion
entirety
this game.
of the damage that Array and Bradley were able to dish out in terms of their ultimate abilities. So that is a big cooldown that could be utilized here by Winthrop. However, here comes another engage. This time it's on the sword. The bullet time plus the death ray is not going to be enough to save the Azir, who will head back to base with that false life. But here comes Wilson. It looks like Winthrop still want to dance. They still want to party. But now USC going to back away after utilizing all of their cooldowns for just that false life taken away.
Right, and that's just it. Sword, he's coming back into the fight.
Here they go. On mobility with Porsche's public execution. There goes the grand entrance in from Trevor. And USC has found a fight that they like. It again is just the false lives, but it does buy them some time around the map and a couple hundred gold. Wilson already utilizing that ultimate. He does have flash available. Denethor going to try to join him here, but it will be another withdrawal for the Xin Zhao. And USC acting up good in this fight. Could be balanced here out, though, as Sword does teleport or just walk straight back up mid lane.
Wait, they can do Baron.
Take down Porsche.
They can do Baron. Porsche's dead for 40 seconds. Winthrop on respawn. They've gotten a Azir Ashe. Do they go for it? Maybe get pushed in mid and move towards it. We'll see. It's spawning right now.
Could be, as Porsche does have this teleport, but it's in 25 seconds. This should be an easy decision for Winthrop University. Denethor still has his false life. I don't know how exactly much longer it will be available for him, but he's going to act as that guard up on the top side above the pit, trying to force the rest of USC's carries away. The Baron's already at 7,000 HP. Kenvi going immediately onto the Gnar, but here comes the collapse. They go straight on to Kenvi, and they take him down with the Baron still being aggroed. That means there is no smite available now for UST, and the two-time champs could be in some trouble. Glacial Fissure knocks at the bullet time, cancels it away from Array. The blast cone is big, and Winthrop secure the Baron. Trevor tries to get out, but Wilson will fall over the wall and flash back out to safety. Porsche's here, but he's far too late. Baron in the hands of Winthrop, but now can USC find anything? Bradley flashes over, but he's just immediately punished by the Emperor's Divided Sword.
Bradley tries to play hero ball, but Winthrop, what a nice Baron force from them after the pick on the Porsche public execution.
Okay, Porsche has the opportunity to get something back, get a way to repay for his sins that he did earlier, but no, it's Denethor that gets the kill. It was nearly a 1v3 situation for the Mbesta, but he's just too far behind. And so USC all of a sudden now facing a 5,000 gold deficit as Winthrop are in a great position in game one.
That's going to expand as well as all three tier 2 turrets are ripe for the taking. So much gold stored in those. Winthrop, they should be able to open up a 8,000 gold lead by the time this Baron power play is all done, and they will have Soul Point in 30 seconds. They're already controlling the bottom side of the map. You can see mobility in only 35. Taking up residence in the bottom side of the jungle. Winthrop University, I mean, just fantastic decisiveness around neutrals this game. It feels like USD has had no agency. The only fight that they won was a mistake from Winthrop. The game planning and the team play just has not been there from the back-to-back champs. It's all about the individual playmaking, but Winthrop has not folded under the pressure.
Why are we here, Trevor? There is no need to be here. The Baron is currently being pushed up into your base, and he is completely isolated from the rest of his team. He has to burn his heal, burn the ultimate, And we'll have to head back to base, but now that really forces UST to give up this third dragon, which they were probably going to give up anyway, but Winthrop going to have an easy time securing Soul Point.
Yeah, I mean, Soul Point, a formality. I definitely do want to see how well can Winthrop utilize this Baron, though, right? How well can they extend their gold advantage? Because that's what they got this Baron for. It's not about the dragons. And you know UST, with all their go buttons, 5 members grouped up on mid, they want to try to find a pick, but Winthrop has done a really good job playing around the engage so far.
Only a minute left on these Baron buffs, so looks like the inhibitors will be safe, but Trevor might not be. There's the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, and Wilson picks up kill number 8. A great game here for the Winthrop jungler at the start of this lower bracket semifinal. 8-2-2, continuing to push down to the bot lane. They might be able to pick up inhibitor, even though the Baron is only up for one more wave.
Only 35. Should just be okay. Winthrop, again, trying to bully UST out of their own jungle. Just make sure their battle lines are secure. We talked about mid-jungle, man. And how about Wilson and Sword? 8 kills for the Xin Zhao and 11 KP for Sword on this Azir. Highest on the team, actually. Winthrop was really able to apply that pressure to Bradley in the way we wanted to see. Taking advantage of, flashes being blown early on to get Wilson the early kills. And then just transitioning to that into an incredible amount of neutral objective control. Denethor mobility, I think as expected, have performed, if not better, just to the level of their opposition, which I think is completely fine for Winthrop when the mid-jungle is going this well.
And the great thing is they don't have to do too much, right? Because Wilson and Sword have really done a lot of good stuff here for this team, at least early on in this series. And they've been a bit of a pain point for Winthrop when we talk about how this roster functions. A lot of the time, their side lanes are the biggest story, and then what the mid-jungle does really determines whether Winthrop are going to look like the team that, can contest with the top, can take a game off of Maryville at Nace, or the team that, drops to Western Ontario, drops games to Apex Mission Impossible in the NACL. But right now, we're getting that first version. We're getting Winthrop and Sword playing at their peak, and that is exactly what Winthrop need in order to clinch a spot in the lower finals. And,
something that's bothered me about watching Winthrop as well is, Wilson and Sword so oftentimes playing around each other. And 85% of the time, these guys are so good, and they play like exactly what we're seeing right now. It's just those 15% of games where they do drop to Western, for example, where it just feels like they're not able to bring it together. So I'm really glad to see the two of them playing at their peaks that we know they can hit right now, because they do have high peaks.
And they can just keep pressing that go button, baby. Array nearly gets singled out by Wilson in an isolated setting. The bullet time, though, will come out. The Unbreakable from only 35 buying a lot of space, but Kenvi will die first. Sword picks up the kill, but he could be in some danger. Porsche flashing after him, forcing the Azir to go golden. He still has his flash, though. He buys his time and will be able to survive. It will be only 35 going down, but it's a massive win here for Winthrop University as they pushed into the mid lane.
Yeah, there was a 3v4, by the way, as Mobility and Denethor just don't even bother to show up for the fight as Rico Chen making the plays on this Azir. Went deep in onto Bradley and survived. Denethor
now for the end. There's a two-man Gnar. Array has to pop the cleanse. He will survive for now. He finally gets one back onto Mobility, but he will fall. And now it's 3 members of the Golden Eagles up against just Trevor. Kenvi's up in 8 seconds. The Nexus Towers are taking a beating. This could be the end of this game 1. How much time can Trevor buy until the rest of his team is able to arrive? It will not be enough time as the Nexus is exposed and Winthrop University take a game 1.
Winthrop, I mean a clinical game 1 at that. 30 minutes and very one-sided as UST with a composition that needs to find picks, that needs to hard engage. They just did not really feel like they were a part of this game. From the minute go, it felt like we were marching to the beat of the Eagles drum. And Wilson and Sword leading the charge. I think a really solid game, though, really from everybody on the side of Winthrop. And I mean, St. Thomas, it's back to the drawing board. A team that we've criticized for relying a lot on individual talent. They definitely looked behind on the team play aspect this time around.
Yeah, it was not the best look here for UST. It seemed like, even though some of the players are having their own moments, I think Porsche, actually on the Ambessa, did look very solid. Interested to see if he brings that back out. As remember, we're not on a fearless draft format, so all these champions will be available for the duration of this series. But it just was not enough, these individual plays for UST is when you're giving up dragons left and right, when you're sacrificing waves, when you're allowing your mid laner to be caught out and forcing him to burn summoner spells early on in that laning phase, it creates situations where Winthrop are able to take advantage of, and they did so beautifully, as
Yeah.
the momentum from their NACL run is really carrying over here in the lower bracket of CLOL.
Yeah. And I mean, UST, they tried to play through Bradley. You know, that was their early focus. Bradley was winning in the early game, but I mean, again, credit to Wilson, credit to Only 35, and even Mobility for getting involved and tilting that mid lane in favor of Sword. We talked about it in the draft. The playmaking potential onto that Victor counter pick can be big. And I mean, Winthrop was able to pull it off. And I mean, with so much invested in trying to get Bradley going and it not panning out for UST, again, questions about how that bot lane is able to function as the series continues. Is Porsche going to be able to take a 1v1 advantage over Denethor? It's not expected, right? Where do you go if you're St. Thomas? Maybe just a shakeup in the draft could be all that they need, but at least so far, I mean, that was a really good first game from Winthrop, and St. Thomas is going to need to step up because it feels like pedal to the metal right now from the NECC third seed.
And remember, there's no opportunity to jump down to the lower bracket, no opportunity to reset. This is it for both of these teams, and most notably for UST, as they are now down 1-0 in this best-of-5 series. Will Winthrop jump up and continue their momentum, or will we get a bit of an even one? As can UST bounce back? We'll find out in just a few short minutes as we head into this brief break. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the College League of Legends Championship. We have our top 4 lower semifinal matchup between Winthrop University and the University of St. Thomas about to begin game number 2. And Winthrop took a very clear and clear-cut game number 1 win, forcing UST, our 2-time champions from 2022 and 2023, to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I mean, it may have looked contested in some of those fights, but I'm going to be honest, it was Winthrop all game long in terms of making the plays. And St. Thomas, I mean, a lot of their games, we look at Bradley and Array specifically. Can they step up and carry in the team fights? But it just felt like UST never really found a team fight, at the very least one where they were on even footing. And I mean, we need to see a couple things from UST for this second game. The biggest one being whatever proactivity they draft in their composition, I need to see them use it. R5 Rakan last game for Trevor felt like it did absolutely nothing. Him and Kenvi were never able to sync up and engage, it felt like, at all. Now back on the red side, chosen by St. Thomas. Can they get onto a counter pick that actually generates an advantage around the map?
Because UST, we didn't mention it at the top of the show, but they had side select going into the series, and they selected red side. And so they've gone back-to-back from this position. We've seen in a lot of major regions, blue side just be the big focus. There's so many power picks like the Gwen, like the Nefiri that can be selected early on, especially in a fearless setting. Of course, we're not in that fearless setting this time around. But again, if you don't utilize that R5 counter pick to much effect, obviously the Rakan had a goal in mind, but it never really was able to achieve it. I would love to see that counter pick used on somebody like Bradley, where he does have some of these pocket picks, the Aurelias, the Akalis, the Aurelian Souls even, that really can be a difference maker in this game.
B1s in Zhao. I mean, why the hell not? Wilson made this champion look disgusting in the first game. It is definitely the strongest jungler on the current patch, in my opinion. And so I like going back towards this. Interestingly, they banned the Azir, maybe wanting to B1 the Xin Zhao and feeling the threat of a potential Azir from Bradley, or maybe Sword just didn't like the matchup. But funnily enough, Grapes, a point we were going to make is that we wanted to see Bradley actually off the Victor, because even though he was pretty good in the early game, it's just very exploitable from a coordinated effort, and we really saw that come through from Winthrop. So we want to see both him and Array. I love this epic. Get onto something higher agency. Get the hell off the Misfortune. Let's see you on something that you can 1v9 with.
And if you've been following League of Legends in the NA developmental space for the last couple of years, you know that Array's Ezreal is to be feared. Had some great moments on it as recently as last summer in the NACL Open qualifiers, and now on this champion will have the ability to do a lot. Alongside Kenvi's Sejuani. Could go towards Porsche as well, but I imagine Kenvi going to be the one piloting this.
And so the Azir ban last game was a Yone ban from Winthrop. So I wonder if that's going to be the option. Rise, a pick that can function pretty well against the Yone in the lane. Obviously loses some early push, but it scales so exceptionally well. I'm assuming this one goes towards Sword. We've not seen Denethor be a Rise top Majora, but we have seen it elsewhere in CLOL. So I'm not... Okay, never mind. Nar got locked in. I'm ruling it out. It's going mid.
And there's the Yone for Bradley. Again, the combination that you can, stack up the permafrost with this Sejuani specifically in that mid jungle is going to be very good. And I like that UST are opting for more agency in the mid lane, where they can potentially break open this combo of Wilson and Sword, who did so well for Winthrop in that first game. Still, we need a top laner and a support selected by UST. Most notably, not a ton of magic damage currently in their composition. Would love to see what exactly that does entail. I imagine a Rumble ban for Winthrop was immediately going to be happening, and there it is.
Yeah, I mean, agency for UST on Array and Bradley checks the box that we wanted. It's also still a fairly simple, straightforward skeleton of a team fight composition. Again, though, I love this blind Gnar from Denethor. He's like, hey, man, you got to beat me, and you didn't really do it last game. Yeah, sure, I almost got solo kill once, but let's just ignore it. And I think Ambessa potentially loses value this game as well, just against Rise, who's so difficult to one-shot. And so Winthrop's just going to leave it open. We'll see if Porsche goes towards it on R4 here. I'm expecting some sort of top lane pick at the very least. R5 for Trevor again. Let's cast our minds back to last game. The Rakan was uninspiring. I need to see something that can compete in the 2v2 for Trevor this time around.
Maybe the Karma, which goes well with that Ezreal. We saw Nova actually play the Karma a while back for UST when they were sent down into that Game 5 situation against Purdue Northwest, and have it worked out pretty well for them. And Best are going to get locked in again, so it will be once more that kind of combo. It seems like when you see overall, just relying on the magic damage that Sejuani, a little bit of Yone, and then whatever Trevor is able to pick up, will be able to balance everything.
Ooh, and Alistair coming out for only 35. So just big front line and a good 2v2 alongside the Corki. I mean, I will say, definitely a lot of room for UST to pick something that wins. I think something like a Karma could be really good right here for Trevor, because you've already got frontline and initiation coming out from the Sejuani, a Ambessa to follow up, and then the Karma shields could just really help keep the whole team in the fight. So I need whatever UST picks to win the 2v2. Like, that's it, man. I just cannot see Mobility and only 35 have pressure in this lane after an R5 2 games in a row.
And especially because they've locked in a composition or a bot lane duo that is not supposed to thrive in that laning phase. The Kai'Sa Alistar, much more for those mid-game fights. You can combine the headbutt pull with the killer instinct, obviously, but early on, going to struggle a little bit against the heavy poke that an Ezreal Karma can provide. I'm imagining that Winthrop going to play heavy around grub control on the top side, try to rotate their bot lane out of that 2v2 as soon as possible. Whereas for the side of UST, I think scaling still works out very well. You can play around the Sejuani Yone. Bradley and Kenvi have to have big games for UST if they want to even up the series.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about the mid-jungle, right? Kenvi and Bradley, they did get Bradley an advantage early on last time, and this Yone pick is higher agency. It's something Bradley can take over on, and the rise for Rico in the mid lane is not the same caliber of like mid-game team fighter that the Azir is. It's a bit more of a scaling pick. I think Winthrop, if they're able to go late game, absolutely slams this game. Kai'Sa Rise later on, I think, are really difficult to deal with for UST. It's just too much DPS later on. And I think for St. Thomas, their DPS actually falls off a little bit, in my opinion. You're really looking towards the mid game. That's where Winthrop was excellent last time. It's another dive comp for St. Thomas again. And we saw them struggle with that in game one. But, I mean, if you're going to win, we said UST has just got to step up. They absolutely have the capability to do it. I want to see them do it. And it is Kenvi, Bradley on this Sejuani and Yone combo that need to be the ones to lead the charge.
And it was interesting to see the champions that UST locked in that had all this, dive threat at the beginning, or like around their top side, around Trevor on the Rakan. And then the main carries really forced to sit back, and it didn't necessarily create the best situations for those team fights. Now that Bradley is involved in this as well and will be a big carry, big damage threat on the Yone, and it's just a Ray that can kind of either play back if he needs to on the Ezreal, or can maybe shift aggressively forward, continue to try to follow up on the rest of the team. I think I like what the style, and how it matches up for UST a little bit more in this game, but they still have to execute on that, which they obviously weren't able to do in game number one.
Karma Ezreal providing a very strong 2v2. I don't love the Kai'Sa pick for mobility because of that. It just struggles so much, and this is going to give a lot of agency to the UST bottom lane. Also, ability to play the extended fights much better than the last game for UST. What a very front-loaded damage composition in game one. So good adaptations for St. Thomas, but Grapes, I will be honest, if Winthrop is able to survive the mid game and they're able to help out mobility and only 35 in that bottom lane, I think their composition scaling could just be too much.
Well, let's see if UST are able to break open Winthrop as we're on the way for game number 2. And before we fully get underway, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor here at the University Esports / St. Clair CLOL broadcast, and that is Exit Lag. If you want to reduce lag, connection instability, and packet locks for a smoother gaming experience, you can use the coupon GGWP to get a little bit of a discount over here at Exit Lag. Shout out to them for sponsoring this show and for sponsoring this broadcast, getting us coverage of Collegiate League of Legends as we are in the most exciting time of the year. It's bracket time. It's lower bracket time. It's top 4 teams going at it against each other, which is what all of this season really has led into.
Only 4 best of 5s remaining in Collegiate. Over 200 teams across all the leagues, and we're down to only 4. And UST down 1-0 right now with a retooled bottom lane. Array on his signature pick. This is the kind of composition that UST can equalize the series with. But let's not forget, it wasn't just the draft that was the issue last time around, but the execution. Winthrop really looks like they're locked in. UST needs to match.
And we'll see if we see any sort of difference in the early game execution and game plan for St. Thomas. We can already see that 2v2 going to be better here for UST this time around. The Celts have that double range bot lane up against what Mobility and only 35 have to offer, which is not a ton, especially level 1.
And not a lot of range either. So yeah, this guy's Alistar, it's a very different look from game 1. Mobility and only 35. I mean, they have no agency in this lane at all. It's all about scaling. It's all about how the team fighting is going to be. And I mean, it's up to UST to take advantage of that. I will say, Winthrop dominated on the neutral objectives last game for the most part, but UST, they did make some decent rotations around towards the grubs and such to get themselves some looks in the early stages of the game, which, I mean, I definitely think can come to fruition this time around. And maybe with the composition with, again, more agency, that's going to be the word of the game. You know, they might be able to actually convert that into later advantages as well.
And Wilson playing a little bit towards that mid lane right now. He knows his sword has pushed, so not really a threat of diving Bradley at this point in the game. And he probably needs to get up to his top side quick because these top laners are trading heavily. Again, this Porsche versus Denethor matchup, a very historic one, which, again, it's surprising to see that we have not actually seen them, play against each other too much with their collegiate organizations at the very least. Porsche and Denethor certainly have gone at it with each other in promotion tournaments and things like in the past. Oh my goodness! That's a first blood picked up for Winthrop in the bottom lane as only 35 mobility, able to use that level 2 advantage.
What happened? I need a replay of this kill in bottom lane. How do you die in that wave state in this position? It's a level 2 Kai'Sa Alistar and you have minion advantage. Trevor, what?
Not really sure how that is supposed to happen. We do have a replay of this bottom lane engage from the start. It just is Trevor, like, there's no reason he should be standing there knowing that that Alistar has full combo.
Yeah, I mean, credit to only 35 for, sometimes when you're in a bot lane 2v2, you just gotta say, hey, screw this guy, they're inting. Flash forward and kill him. Now, no summoners means threat of a dive potentially, but the wave already getting thinned out, so Winthrop basically just gets gifted a freebie, only 35, able to punish the mistake of St. Thomas's support. Remember, Trevor subbing back into the lineup after not playing last week. And I mean, to be, quite upfront, it was due to performance-related issues, and now Winthrop is going to get killed top.
Yeah, Wilson was path in top lane, and that's exactly where he ends up, as that is another kill going in onto Porsche. Denethor picking it up. 2-0 early on here for the Golden Eagles, and they're going to look for something on the bot side as well. Trevor between the towers to try to clear out some of this wave. He knows that Kenvi is here, so he can play safe. But unlike the engage that Wilson made up on the top side, Kenvi's unable to get anything in the bottom side.
Yeah, I mean, they do deny mobility a wave, so the Ezreal already up quite a bit of CS. It's something for St. Thomas, but it's not a kill, as you say. And Wilson able to make something happen. Mismatch pathing for junglers is all about who's able to trade up. And this time, Wilson wins out, continuing to have a great series.
Perfectly executing on that game plan, right? Porsche had the early push into Denethor, and Denethor allowed that wave to kind of come towards him and struck when the moment was right and allowed for that first blood to be given over to the Nara. One long sword advantage is what it gives him, as basically they're on the similar build path.
That's a lot of swords.
Now. Yeah, 5 swords up there in the top side, and none of them are playing Rise. There's 6 swords, actually. It's a 2-sword advantage for Winthrop.
Yeah, true. And they also got, they got the hammer for their jungler as well. Like it's a lot of weapons on the top side. Meanwhile, the weapon himself, he's just getting some nice little bits and bobs, some jewels and some rings. I do like how in like all fantasy media, including League of Legends, like for whatever reason, people that use magic, they just get more powerful with jewelry. That's always entertained me.
Yeah, they're the
right. They're like sacred in some way or something.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the word is.
But no, see, Bradley is like everybody that I knew in middle school, though. He gets stronger with a new pair of shoes.
That is true. When you got the new pair on, you're showing off.
He's got the new J's, bro.
Did you ever get to wear wheelies? I was so jealous of
dude,
my classmates.
Okay.
Had those. As hold on, mobility. I have to wheel on out of here in the bot lane as he's getting rooted up by Trevor.
He's fine.
Will be able to survive with that berry being popped, and in comes Sword with the Realm Warp. The Kai'Sa still taking a ton of damage, but here comes that cow. Only 35 looking in onto the Ezreal. Really nice flash to get away from the headbutt pulse combo. Sword continuing to issue out damage and forcing Trevor to 150 HP.
Sword was kind of working Array and Trevor right there. Great one warp to defend. And while all of that was happening, it was Grubs going over to Wilson. Now it should be equalized by a Dragon for Kenvi on the backside. I will say Bradley, he could not decide if he wanted to commit to joining the fight or stay mid and push the wave. He ends up pushing mid now, but he's late to it. It means it's going to be less denied from Sword, who's already back onto the map. So indecisiveness from the UST mid laner means not really an advantage gained.
Not too much, and that's a pretty good sign here for Winthrop, as even though UST kind of giving them new opportunities to find agency, find plays, it just hasn't really worked out. There was a lot of resources they sent down to the bot lane to try to get a kill onto mobility, and even after you burn the barrier, hey, the flash is back up off of cooldown as well, so it's going to be even more of a challenge to try to go down there.
And look, I want to give UST credit. They're doing part 1 out of 2 of the game plan adaptations I wanted them to see. Hey guys, can we actually group up and attack somebody and try to get an advantage? They're doing it. They've got a CS lead for Array, quite a substantial one. The problem is the execution is part 2, and it's not really been there. Array and Trevor playing out the 2v2 well enough to get that lead, but Mobility, he's the one that's 1-0, right? So he's not out of the game by any means. So, you know, UST, they're halfway there. We'll see if they can use at least the game planning aspect to maybe convert this into a game 2 victory.
I would love to see these CS advantages turn into something more, though, right? Like, this is the first step, as you mentioned, but what can this Yone Sejuani do? I mean, we haven't seen really any attempts at Sword's life in the mid lane. Obviously, it's a bit
Bradley's
of a
pretty
difficult
far
lane
ahead, though,
to capture here. But if you don't win the fights, that's what's gonna make a difference. And you know, honestly, for Winthrop, despite the fact that they are falling behind and some of their laners are a little bit weaker, they were able to save mobility down to the bot lane. They were able to get all 3 of those grubs. That first spawn is going to be pretty important. That secures them at least an even state in terms of that department. And that means that the scaling can continue for them as they can try to continue to get Sword strong, continue to get that tier stacked up. And mobility, too, will eventually be at a point where he can go for all in.
And if we can get a gold toggle from the observers, I would really like to see. If I had to guess, I think Bradley and Array are just a little bit ahead, and that's exactly the case alongside Denethor, right? And that is what you want as UST, is your 2 big carries that are ahead of the curve. Winthrop, they're happy that everyone is at least staying relevant. That's the most important thing for them. But UST has their money in the right places, and these guys will be able to start cooking once they hit 2 items in the mid game. Yone, Ezreal, so strong when they get to that point.
And Array and Bradley, 2 players that have been a part of the amateur, the NACL scene for as long as we've been around Hawk, and even longer than that. Bradley back here on CLOL team, looking to try to make something happen, but Porsche is having some trouble here as a really nicely utilized Realm Warp comes through from Sword, and that secures Winthrop the Feats of Warfare.
Yeah, Denethor just called up his guys and said, hey, I got a hit up here in the top lane as Sword, good roams on the rise so far. He sacrificed some CS for it, but I think Winthrop's going to be pretty okay being up 3-0 in the kill department.
Still up about 1,000 gold, too, as even though the CS leads are here for UST, it hasn't resulted in any kills going over. But it does come with the price of plates in the bot side. That is what Array and Trevor still are able to generate, despite that kill being in the hands of mobility. Should be able to clinch this one with just one more auto attack, and there it is.
Yeah, it is actually really interesting to me. I'm surprised that Winthrop is up 1,000 gold because of the plates and the farm advantage that UST has. The kills doing a lot.
Under Bradley. Oh, the face shield actually does not tag anybody. Bit of luck there from Bradley to get out with just that ultimate ability. But Wilson going to continue to chase. Porsche has arrived here first. And with that Mbessa showing face, it forces the mid jungle for Winthrop to back away.
Yeah, but USC didn't have the health bars to actually turn that around, so Porsche just sort of ends up playing bodyguard, and it means Denethor can crash a wave, and that's just going to be grubs to Winthrop. So it's still Wilson and Sword. They are just playing so well in this series, getting an objective despite UST being the first ones to make the move.
And it's going to result in all 6 grubs, actually.
6 grubs, so yeah, it's huge.
It's a big win for Winthrop off of that play. Even though they don't get a kill, they burn the ultimate. That's a lot of the tools that that UST might have wanted to use. And so, yeah, it's another win here for Winthrop University. They're going to get increased pushing power, and I think most notably, they deny the grubs at all from UST.
Yeah.
That's a pretty key part of their composition.
Both these comps really like side laning Gnar Rise against Yone and Besso later on, and the Grub's going to really tilt that. I think this is going to be first tower here, and feats of strength to Winthrop. Like, and it goes exactly into the point I was just going to make. Winthrop is one of the better teams in CLOL, in my opinion, at playing for their side lanes. We saw a lot of grouping up last game because they could and because they had the composition to do it, but this team is not afraid to just overload on a side and start pushing. And the 6 Grubs really opens up that potential, decision-making process. So I think Winthrop is super happy to be able to pick those up.
So if you're UST now, you're down about 1,000, 2,000. You're down 2,000 gold. You have first items starting to come through for some of your players, but not fully there just yet. Is when you hit that spike, is that when you want to try to immediately start looking for opportunities? Because it's been a while of them just kind of sitting back and taking a beating when they're the team that does have that agency to start fights.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's not for lack of trying, right? They tried to get bot lane going, but it just hasn't really worked out. And that's, I think, more credit really to Winthrop, in my opinion, for how they've executed. And now UST is not going to get their chance. Second Dragon, but it's Winthrop on the aggressive.
Yeah, they're going to have Kenvi here to try to peel away from Array, but that Ezreal's already used all his
so
spells and the Arcane Shift, and Wilson still on top of him. Sword picks the first kill on the Trevor. It's a 2-0 already for the Golden Eagles, and Winthrop continuing their might, continuing their strength here in the lower semifinals. They pick up another fight and will head towards the Drake.
I mean, Grapes, you said it on Salty Runback. You felt like Winthrop might be the second best team in the tournament right now, and we're seeing why. They are locked in.
On to another dive they go. Soul Unbound is issued by Bradley. He's going to try to use it to weave his way away from things. He's able to get 1 kill on only 35, but will go down to Wilson again. The tower aggro juggled once more by Winthrop, meaning that only their support will drop. Porsche on the way, though. Can be very low on HP and mana, but still will be able to provide some crowd control. Here comes that public execution, and it allows for a shutdown to go the way of Trevor, and Porsche picks himself up another. So a bit of an overplay for Winthrop, and it means that that dragon now can be started up by UST.
Yeah, that was not the follow-up dive from Winthrop right there. Trevor? Flash Mantra Q?
No,
not going to find him.
Minions MVP.
Yeah, okay. All right, Trevor, not able to find it, but Winthrop way too aggressive. They either need to focus on the tower or focus on the dragon. Instead, they go back for the kills, but League is a turn-based game. If you double dip, everybody at the party is not going to like you. And UST, they caught him red-handed.
Yep, with the chip straight into that salsa for the second
dude,
time.
It was so gross, man. Like, everyone saw him do it. And we're going to see him do it again. Oh, it's so ugly. Here's the initial dive, though. This was baller from Winthrop, man. 5 stack in the bottom lane, just faster to the play. UST didn't have 1 item spikes on really anybody, so Winthrop able to go for it. But here's the point where, as the next minion wave comes in, it's like, you either got to decide, hey, guys, we got 6 grubs, let's just hit this turret and get some gold. Or just go do the dragon, man. This is just not it. Yeah, Bradley and Kenvi are able to buy time. You don't have the Unbreakable Will to tank up the tower, and those guys still had resources. UST, I think, well played to them. Kenvi in particular, just able to buy so much time, and Porsche cuts off the escape. Great public execution here, but Winthrop just has to not go for this.
I can see the vision, because if you were able to pick up those 2 kills faster onto Kenvi and Bradley, it's just even more demoralizing, and it just goes
But then you still have the base, though, right? Like, you get a couple kills, but you're still not getting the dragon, because then you're, like, really out of tempo. So, I don't know. I don't subscribe.
Yeah, especially because those plates did not fall, right? Like, there was still a lot of resistances on that turret. There was no chance that they would have been able to take that down, and they weren't even looking for it as well. They went for the kills, and I think just picking up that dragon, getting themselves that win condition's denied by UST, right? Because now they have the first 2 Drakes of the game, and they have a little bit of momentum back into things. It's, of course, not any gold onto their crucial big carries like Bradley and Array, but now Porsche's online a little bit. He'll be able to side lane just a bit better, and Kenvi still now picking up that Heartsteel, so the engaged tools are now all ready to go for UST.
Yeah, and the good news is that with UST getting that dragon, they do still have that soul stacking win condition. Ocean Soul, not the best against the high DPS of Winthrop in the late game. I shan't lie to you, Grapes, but Soul's a soul, and it's good. And now that UST has those 1 item spikes, they're rapidly approaching the second one. They sort of get bailed out for getting forced into a bad fight before they were ready. And now that they're online, they can pick up their first tower, and down only $1,000. It's a pretty manageable deficit, actually, for UST at this moment.
Yeah, so they'll be able to get a little bit back. It does come at the cost of all of the top side objectives secured so far.
And they want to make a dive
by
happen.
Winthrop, so they've been fully going for it. However, here comes a trade on the other side of the map. Sword in some trouble. The Realm Warp, will it get him away? It does! No crowd control save for when that ultimate was issued. And Sword says CY outside and heads back to base for free.
Oh my god, Sword! How does he get out of that? Now Winthrop, they could use their 6 grubs to just barrel down mid lane. You have to get that kill as UST. Kenvi has to save the Arctic Assault. He doesn't, because he'd already used it to get into the fight. And I mean, yeah, you lose a wave and some damage on a bot lane tier 2, but it don't matter too much.
It does not indeed. The gold has been stabilized just a little bit off of course, that tower being taken down. But if you are UST, really wish you got that one on the Sword. That would have been a shutdown. That would have been just more gold kind of issued onto Porsche as well. So would have been nice.
Crepes, it just feels like a repeat of game 1 where UST, even this game, they've been better about making proactive plays, but they have not had a single one of their looks really work out for them. Winthrop is simply outplaying on the defense, and not only that, they come prepared with a counterpunch every single time. Meanwhile, it feels like when Winthrop goes aggro, oftentimes it's able to work. It's only when they overplay that UST gets something back. The Golden Eagles, in my opinion, simply outplaying.
Oh, but they might have walked into their own demise here. Wilson in some trouble as he face checks the brush.
That's on me.
Potsencard has been popped, and yeah, right, picking up that kill. Caster Curse in effect here in game number 2.
Good group right there from UST to try to take something, and I don't think Sword gets it.
Oh,
Oh, he's got the TP.
He's going to try to dash in. Oh, nice flash from
Kenvi!
Kenvi. Predicts the teleport being issued, knowing that he had to close the gap. And so Sword now going to go down here eventually. They're going to try to give the kill over to Bradley, and they do. A shutdown onto the Yone. And UST clawing their way back into this one slowly but surely.
Again, Winthrop prepared with the counter punch, able to get the tier 2 in mid, and Sword will respawn in time to potentially play for this dragon, Denethor.
Kenvi with that ultimate available. Oh, he finds it onto mobility. Not a ton of gap closing just yet, though. Here comes that ulti from Porsche. Denethor is down. UST come back with a vengeance here in game number 2. They find themselves another kill. Onto the main carry, onto that Gnar, and now can head right back to that dragon spawning in 15.
Okay, UST mid-game team fighting coming online. TC, Porsche, and Kenvi leading the charge. As, I'm going to be honest, Porsche, both game 1 and 2, these team fought very nicely on this Ambessa, finding good ultimates, good target selection. And Kenvi, I mean, the Flash Arctic Assault blind on a Sword was pretty baller, man. Able to pick up their 3rd dragon of the game. And the Lions not done just yet.
The gold, take a look at it, right back to even. Of course, not meaning everything in this game, as a lot of it is on Kenvi right now, is 2-0 and 3 on the Sejuani. But I think overall, you're very happy if you are UST with how you're able to stabilize after a lot of things that they were trying to do just ended up not working out at the start of this one.
Yeah, and it's what you got to do as well, because mobility and Sword now having those 2 item spikes. Roa almost completed, but they didn't get there fast enough. And UST, for their first time, it feels like this series, finding a good proactive play, but now they're on the receiving end.
Yeah, Winthrop still want to press that go button. They're going in on a Kenvi. That would be a big kill. Shutdown going the way of Denethor as they've caught out the Sejuani, but Bradley still wanted to go in here. Has a stolen bounce and can tether back as soon as he was able to. No, he gets one shot, and crowd control chained to oblivion. And Denethor comes in with an RLT and picks up another kill. It's 4-0 in favor of Winthrop, as only 35 is laughing on their graves.
Oh, only 35. That is disrespect, man. He's not been afraid. Dude, I love watching this player. Ever since he's come to Winthrop, he's been so outspoken, and I just love it, man. He's been like a CLOL player through and through is only 35, despite, you know, not originally being from NA, and that's what you love to see, the opportunity to come and play at a high level. And Winthrop, they hit those item spikes we talk about. They go aggressive, recognizing their point of power, and they can take the Ruinous Otacon. A ton of experience going to go into their pockets, as it's simply only 35 leading the charge, and Sword, great Realm Warp to cut off the escape. This is the crazy part to me, though. Bradley gets rooted by Sword, and the whole team focus fire one-shots the Yone, and all of UST trying to bail him out. They just end up dropping as well.
So, as soon as we were seeing UST start to come back in this one, here come Winthrop once again. They get themselves, I believe that Otacon is going to be A fair amount of those blood roses in their favor
Swords
now.
level
No Baron on the map,
15.
obviously, as we're pre-25.
He just completed that Roa. Swords 15. This boy's online. He's scaled.
He's a big boy at this point, and gonna continue to get bigger. And now the question is, can that all-in potential, can UST's engage tools even provide anything, or provide a pick even onto somebody like Sword if he's really that tanky, really that over-leveled?
They
Bradley's
want
level
Porsche.
13 right now. He really just not in a good position as Winthrop are continuing their aggression. They know they have 6 grubs. They can take these towers, just slowly but surely chip away at them. And they are continuing their push onto that top lane, tier 3. Now here's the problem. Sorry, tier 2 turret. Here's the problem here for UST, or for Winthrop. UST still have that soul point at their disposal. It's going to be spawning in 2 minutes. And it either means that they're going to be able to force a fight on their own terms, or Winthrop's going to have to wait a long time to try to claim that for themselves.
And Ray and Bradley have hit their items, but only 35's lurking.
Oh, he finds a headbutt pull, but it's flashed away by Bradley, who now looks to go back in a little bit with that soul unbound. Nice poke back and forth. A good look there from only 35. But it's not able to find much. Just the flash from Bradley. We'll see if they can abuse that later on in this into this one.
Critically maintaining the ultimate. But Winthrop, they're doing such a good job playing around push again. No stranger to overloading on a side lane and then just shoving UST out of their own jungle. And again, Kenvi just seems to be lacking a bit of confidence to pull the trigger. But understandably so, when there's an Alistar leading the charge. Only 35 doing a great job of frontlining so far in this game. And I'm going to be honest, this might be an uncontested dragon going the way of Winthrop. They do have to reset at some point, though.
Will it be now? Looks like one last reset potentially for that Soul Dragon that UST do want themselves to claim. But I would advise maybe be a little bit careful. If the fight's not looking super good, you can go back, reset another 5 minutes. However, I think UST are going to look for something right here. They have 2 full items on most of all of their carries. Porsche's at 3 with that Serpent's Fang now coming in to try to take away some of the Seraph shields as well as the Killer Instinct shield from mobility. And so UST, I think, are feeling very powerful right now. We'll see how they want to start this one off.
First into the river. Bradley going to walk up.
Oh, they got someone! It goes in onto Wilson, but it's immediately followed up by the headbutt pull of only 35. It's popped the Unbreakable Will. Root comes in. Here comes the Killer Instinct in from mobility. A huge Gnar! Denethor! And the flank is in! Winthrop University gonna be able to come away with this fight. Bradley and Array are still alive, but Wilson will dive right on top of him off of the back of the Mega Gnar. Denethor wins the fight, and Winthrop get themselves the ace.
Once upon a time when Denethor was a young top laner that had just joined Winthrop University in 2023, he was known as a Camille Gnar 2-trick, and Denethor 5-man Gnar into the wall, able to find everybody, and Winthrop wins the fight. Winthrop has scaled, Winthrop has denied the soul, and they look like they are cruising towards a 2-0.
Oh man, what a fight coming out from them. And with Sword, who also completed that flank, UST were completely sequestered into that little chokehold, and Winthrop were able to take advantage of it. I hope we get a replay of that fight if it is available, because man, what an engage that was here from the Gnar. Here we go. Let's watch it again.
It looks okay at the start. They get Wilson, they get everyone so low, but they just had to go too far forward, and Denethor just finds everyone. Bradley also arriving just a bit late to the fight. Honestly, salvages quite a bit here, able to still get 2 kills, including onto mobility, but it's just not enough. It's too little too late. Again, Winthrop more coordinated as 5, and Denethor making superstar plays just as we'd expect.
And they're not going to let up on that pressure. It's worked well for them so far. Why bother playing back? Well, maybe you can get punished a little bit here as Wilson is knocked up. But Winthrop now can play around this Baron Nashor. It's just spawned and will come as a big boost for their pushing power. When you have the 6 grubs, when you have the Baron buff, these towers will just melt, especially with the composition that the Eagles do have. So UST going to be forced to respond soon.
Winthrop has been so good at forcing UST to march to the beat of their own drum, and they're going to continue it by starting the Baron. Now, they don't want to finish this, and they know it.
Shot Barrage, not finding anybody, but it does push Winthrop away. Bradley there to aggro the Baron just a little bit longer, but will end up backing on out.
But look at the yo-yoing. Winthrop pushing in both their side lanes where they still have tier 2s to take. Winthrop forced a 5-man response from UST, so now they're going to be late going back to base. Denethor should be able to get this wave in on bottom, maybe a bit of damage on the tower, and Winthrop can use that timer to walk back into St. Thomas's jungle, clear all the wards, and boom, all of a sudden you control the entire map.
And that's exactly what they're doing right now. You see Denethor onto the tier 2 turret. Let's see if Porsche is able to find some sort of answer to it, but that tower just continuing to melt, and Porsche is going to have to eventually join his team. But Winthrop don't care about that.
It's just great
Denethor
macro.
just takes the tier 2 turret in front of Porsche's face.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, great macro from Winthrop. UST opted to stay with 4 members on the top side, but it just meant that Porsche was late to the bottom lane tower, and that's the power of the 6 grubs. 3 items on the Gnar for Denethor. 3 items really for almost everybody. I think Winthrop waiting for Sword to get to that point with the Zonias before they pull the trigger on their next fight. But I'm going to be honest, I think we've hit the point in the game where I feel like Winthrop's composition is just better unless UST can find a miraculous engage onto either Sword or Mobility. But it's going to be difficult with their flashes coming back up pretty soon.
I don't know. I don't know if UST has it anymore. You mentioned how Winthrop do more damage once we get to the late game. Once these items come in for Mobility and Sword, we have clearly reached that at this point. Nearly a full Zhonya's in for Sword. And Bradley and Array, they were able to do a little bit, but frankly not enough in that team fight that we just saw around the Dragon. So here we go. Once again, engaging begun by Winthrop. His only 35 might have gone in a bit of a pickle for himself, but he lands a 2-man pulverize, and here comes the re-engage. Denethor's Mega Gnar is approaching. Realm Up comes in, and Sword joining the party. Denethor jumps forward, and they will secure the kill, at least on Sejuani. That should be the Baron, but they could look for more. Knock-up lands onto Bradley. He's going to use the Stolen Bound to get back, but the Killer Instinct comes forward. Mobility trying to hunt him down. Bradley able to jump away underneath this 2-2 turret, but the Void Match comes through. Here comes the Public Execution. Porsche trying to save his mid laner, and he will. But now the bot lane of UST is in a terrible position. Trevor gets singled out. Array's next to follow, and it's overall a 3-0 in favor of the Eagles.
I gotta give Only 35 a lot of credit, man. He is frontlining like a boss on this cow, and he's laughing on him yet again as UST goes for a haphazard engage, just trying to start something, trying to defend their jungle. But Only 35 says, yo, bet, and just turns around, flash pulve into 2, and Winthrop, that's all they need to get the fight going to convert it into a Baron. Dragon spawning in 55 should be able to pick it up, but that's not even their concern, because it's going to be all about pushing in the lanes and trying to end this game in clinical fashion, just like the last. As we can get another look at the back end of the fight, it was Kenvi first to die after trying to get things started. And Bradley, honestly, maybe a bit of a mistake, going back in with a soul unbound. Wilson turns it around onto him, ultimately gets away, but it's what allowed Winthrop to section off the bottom lane of St. Thomas by getting the extra distance.
And you have to wonder if UST, they were able to find a couple of fights. They seemed like they got what they wanted in the draft too. What other answers are they going to have? Remember, this is the best of 5, so Winthrop winning this one would put themselves at match point and force UST to go for that reverse sweep. And they have been able to do that in the past here, Hawk, but I don't know how likely it's going to be against a team that is just playing so well at this point in CLOL. UST looking for their answer here. It's going to be on the Sword underneath the tier 1. Zhonya's has been popped. Sword should be able to survive for a little bit longer.
He's fine.
The turret first, and now they'll go for their prize. But Bradley does not hit the ultimate. Killer Instinct not going to be available for mobilities on the other side of things. It goes in favor of a 1-for-1. They finally get their kill on the Sword, but here comes the collapse. Winthrop are here to try and make them pay. Pulverize comes in. So Only 35 knocks out both soul laners. Denethor takes down Trevor on the backline, and that should be the fight in favor of Winthrop as they punish the overextension.
Might just be the game. They do have teleports and a wave in mid. Mobility the focus, though. Did you overstep?
Pops that Killer Instinct. He should just be fine. Dodges away here from that Mystic Shot. Array 2 levels down now onto the Kaisa. And Denethor teleporting in to keep Mobility alive. These former teammates on Tempest Gaming reuniting here on Winthrop University. They are the ones who are pushing into the mid lane. You're going to try to duel away from from Kenvi and Array. And instead, they're going to take their sights towards that mid lane inhibitor. They're pushing on the top lane as well. Winthrop going to try to go for the throat.
Yeah, they got 2 waves of Baroned up minions. Bradley and Porsche still dead for 10 seconds. 6 grubs, but no. Winthrop will back away. But man, what a series we are watching from them. Sword able to buy a tremendous amount of time under the tower. I talked about the tankiness of the Rise later on into the game. And the Zhonya is not just providing value in terms of the stasis, but also the armor against the Yone and the Ambessa. And Denethor is able to collapse. And then not only that, help out his AD carry as well. You talk about these two guys, Denethor and Mobility. They've been attached at the hip for their entire career. Now for 4 years, these two have been playing together, and so much talent between the two of them. Grapes, two players that I still believe could be on LTA trajectories. They have routinely impressed me over the course of their tenures. And I mean, Winthrop, incredibly lucky to have the two of them on their squad and playing as well as they are alongside the rest of the team in this series.
You know, we fly those little graphics in the between game segments of different statements that, you know, the players have been making and some of their questions that were answered for them. Denethor, you ask him, like, what is his goal? What does he want to achieve here in CLOL? He wants to become the best top laner in North America, not just in CLOL, not just North American Collegiate, in NA. And, you know, there's still a little bit way to go to get there, but if he continues the way that he's been playing here, if he can turn that into something in the NACL stage as well, and
yeah,
this is why Collegiate is that path to pro. We saw so many players kind of make that leap, Surdy and Scary Jerry, in our finals last year. And Denethor is going to try to hope that he becomes that next person.
I mean, you can't doubt the hunger that Denethor has. A player that I've always praised for his continuous improvement, seemingly, as a player, always visibly evolving over the splits that he does play. And Winthrop, though, they're going to try to go for the throat. One last fight for UST. Public execution goes wide.
It does not connect, but they still have to go for broke here in the mid lane. Denethor jumping forward. There's no Mega Gnar available, but Mobility is going to dash forward the Killer Instinct. Porsche is going to get saved by the Redemption, and Kenby will survive. Nobody's died just yet here for UST, but the health bars are low. They'll be able to go back to the fountain and reset. Mobility goes golden, but he's chunked very low. No follow-up available, though, for the Celts, and Winthrop will be able to get out with their lives, at least for now. Array trying to chase here with that Arcane Shift. But there comes that Realm Warp Sword. It sends everybody from Winthrop on out.
Oh, a bit of a mistake for Mobility. Lost both of his summoners and his stasis on the back end of it. And Winthrop, they actually lose quite a bit of time. But, I mean, it's not the end of the world. They've obviously still got the scaling. But down resources with Dragon Soul spawning in a minute 20. I mean, UST, 3 items on everybody. Maybe there's a way.
Maybe, but maybe is far from a certainty at this point here, Hawk. It's not looking great. Even when they used all of their abilities, when they used all their spells, when they caught Winthrop off guard even, it did not result in any kills going over. You do have no summoner spells on Mobility for the next little bit. It's a Soul Dragon up in a minute, and that is what USC have to play around. You know, you talk about being able to delay things and you know, try to wait for the Soul to really be a factor here. That's what USC have been able to do. But here's their timer. They need to go for this, and they need to pick up a win right here, right now, or else the game's going to end.
And UST has to find a way around only 35 because he has been an impregnable fortress on the front line for Winthrop with how much space he's been able to buy on this Alistair. And it just feels like UST has not been able to solve that problem any of these engages, instead just being forced to go onto the cow and hope for the best. And I mean, it's just been a pain point for them. Winthrop able to take full control, retake full control of UST's bottom side jungle, and I don't think the Celts are going to see this Dragon Grapes.
Oh, Bradley, he's just in a lot of trouble, singled out trying to push out a wave. And he's not able to join this fight anymore. 4 members of Winthrop collapse upon him. Denethor flashing in, getting that Gnar ultimate just onto Kenby, but they're going to be happy with that. The Sejuani is down. That's 2 members of UST out of the picture, and they can now go for the end without the soul even being claimed. Trevor goes down. It's just Porsche and Array alive, and Winthrop are going to pick up another inhibitor and try to break open the base.
Yet again, St. Thomas just not able to find a team fight, and Winthrop, they're going to close it out right here. Go up 2-0, match point in the lower bracket semifinal.
Array and Porsche gonna have to pull out some sort of miracle, but they will not be able to do so. Mobility on the Kaisa in the backline doing the work, and on to the Nexus they go. 2 more wins here for Winthrop as they push themselves to match point over UST.
Winthrop is just playing a phenomenal series, and St. Thomas, for all of their talent that they may have, looks completely helpless when it comes down to the 5 versus 5 elements. The extra games that Winthrop get in the NACL and that they've had to play in this lower bracket. Hell, I mean, they are paying dividends for this squad. They look like a complete squad, and UST on their last ride, they are one game away from getting knocked out.
What a run it would be, going from losing your first round game all the way to Raleigh, North Carolina for that CLOL Finals, for a chance to rematch against Dark Zero, Dragonsteel, Maryville, whatever you want to call them. This new team that, hey, they look a little bit different from the last time they faced off against each other at the NACE Grand Finals down in Orlando. We'll see if that actually does mean anything. Still some work to be done here, though, for Winthrop. They both need to close this series out and then take out the eventual losers of Maryville versus Ole Miss, which will be happening after this series' conclusion. We are in a very dire spot for UST, the two-time CLOL champions, at risk of potentially finishing in their worst ever position in the program's history, Hawk.
Yeah, which, look, let's be honest with ourselves at least a little bit to manage some expectations. Hey, 4 years in your worst placement being fourth, it's pretty damn good for St. Thomas, but you know these players, they're competitors. They have their sights set higher, and it's still going to be about adjustment because it does just feel like UST, we saw some of the proactive looks from them this game, but they weren't able to convert. Now, game 3, this is your moment to convert. Otherwise, Winthrop, I fear that they might just be able to run away with things because they have been so good, especially in the mid stages of the game. And, I mean, we'll see if they're able to close out the sweep.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a huge comeback for UST, but they've been able to face adversity before. They've gone the distance in 2 of their series so far in CLOL. Will it be a third? Will they start that journey towards a reverse sweep, or is Winthrop just going to shut that damn door? We'll find out once we come back from the coverage of the 2025 College League of Legends Championships right after this short break. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of the 2025 College League of Legends National Championships. We are at game number 3 in our lower bracket semifinal between Winthrop University and the University of St. Thomas, two teams that have won CLOL championships in their history, and one of them looking a little bit more likely to do so, as Winthrop are up 2-0 so far in this series. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Hawk for this best of 5. Reminder, stay tuned after this one as we'll get our winners finals between Maryville and Ole Miss right after this. But Hawk, it might be sooner rather than later that we get that winners final started, because Winthrop are on a absolutely great run so far.
They are on a heater. I want to bring this up again, Grapes. You said that Winthrop might be the second best team remaining in this tournament, and both you and I agreed that UST feels like the weakest. And boy, that has been correct so far, because St. Thomas has just been floundering in these games. They've not found an answer for the absolute onslaught that Winthrop has put down on the map, just routinely attacking lane after lane after lane, and UST has just not been able to stabilize in this series. And Winthrop now one game away from the best result that they've had since their win all the way back in 2021. They could get to top 3 and they could be on the brink of doing the unthinkable, running the entire lower bracket to get to Raleigh. Obviously, the conclusion of that will be tomorrow. And St. Thomas does still stand in their way. A reverse sweep potentially in the cards. Once upon a time, back-to-back champions. You know, TC Porsche and company want to reclaim that mantle and not go down in their roughest performance in school history.
And we talk about how Porsche is kind of that lone remaining member from the UST team of old. You might not remember that back in 2021, Array and Trevor were the initial bot lane that was picked up by UST when they played in tournaments like Gateway Legends. Then, Array got an offer from Golden Guardians that resulted in a new bot lane coming in Shogo and Chookies, right?
Who are those guys? I think that bot lane might have worked out for them. I don't remember.
It worked out, surely, yes. But it is kind of that reunion of a core of players that initially started this program in 2021 and now potentially playing a bit of a swan song here. They're going to still look to try to pull off that reverse sweep to keep their run alive, but it has not looked great for them so far. We see an early Xin once again, as why not go for it once more? We're not in that fearless format. Wilson can just continue to play this. Whereas on the other side is a Victor Wukong locked in on 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson has just been disgusting on the Xin Zhao so far. I don't love the Victor. It's lower agency for Bradley, and it's blind this time as well. Opens up the blind pick again for Denethor on the Gnar. At the very least, I like the Wukong for Kenvi. It is the most carry-oriented champion we've seen from him so far this series. Obviously, those that remember the Kenvi of old, more of a carry player. And Kenvi, we saw it in the rotating player cards during the break, said he wants to be remembered for being someone that can step up when it matters most. This is that moment. Kenvi on the Wukong needs to be the guy.
We'll see if he's able to kind of tap back into what made Kenvi such a great player back in the day, back in the last couple of years when he was dominating 100 Thieves and dominating in the academy scene and the like. Wukong certainly a pick that can find value there. It's going to be an Orianna locked in for Swords, so no Rise this time around. It's going to be matched by a Scion here for Porsche into that Gnar, so opting away from that Mbessa matchup, and Hawk opting towards more scaling overall for UST.
Yeah, I mean, you know that Denethor is going to be real happy in this matchup. I can tell you that much, but it is a big, beefy front line. We talk about Porsche being weak side king. The Mbessa I thought was pretty good from him, honestly, in the first 2 games. Like, he did his best, given the circumstances, I think. But I think at some point, you've just got to change something because it's not been working for St. Thomas. Let's go more team fighting. Let's get a hyper carry for Array. They're banning out a couple of those other ones, Aphelios, Zeri. I wonder if we're going to see like a Jinx pick here for Array.
Would be an interesting way to like really index yourself into that late game, right? As a lot of early game carries already have been banned out. Varus,
Jinx banned.
Caitlyn, Callista, but the Jinx is taken away by Winthrop. So looks like Artemis in the gang. Definitely a little bit scared of what that can offer for somebody like Array. The Ezreal's still up. If they want to go right back to it, I just don't know if that's enough damage for them to completely navigate this 5v5.
Yeah, I mean, just go to it, man. It's a race pick. Like, they're going to give him R5 this time. I mean, it's not really worked out for Trevor. The Rakan in game 1 was not great. And then the Karma, he got killed at level 2. So may as well just throw him on something that's going to be useful. It's follow-up engage alongside the Wukong. I will say Orianna for Sword, the most attackable pick that he's went for so far. Azir Rise so much individual safety. definitely room to hard engage onto this guy. But for mobility, the Xayah is up this game. It was banned in the previous 2. He had a great game, I thought, on Xayah against Dark Zero Light. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Didn't end up winning, but I thought Mobility's team fighting on the pick was really quite good, and it'll have a lot of value against some of that initiation that UST is bringing to the table.
And there's a Alistar once again from only 35. He played it very nicely in that game number 2. Honestly, a Kai'Sa
it was a problem
for UST to round out this composition, but instead they're going to go for the Tristana
for
Array at the bottom lane position. So something that can do late game damage. It can have a lot of high range alongside Bradley's Victor, but also can be a little bit aggressive, can press that go button if it needs to.
Yeah, I like this pick a lot for Array, actually, because you're not sacrificing the 2v2 that much because you're against an Alistar. Like, you're still not getting push at level 1, really, with this Kai'Sa Alistar, right? Or the Xayah Alistar. So, like, Array and Trevor should be okay in the 2v2, at least for the most part, and it is insane late game DPS scaling on this Tristana, and you're so safe in bringing that to the table. And I like the draft adaptations from UST this time. Their late game is much better. They bring a lot more AoE and consistent DPS to the table, which also makes this Alistar much less of a problem. Last game, it was still a lot of like single target damage and initiation that Alistar thrives against. This time, many more tools to bypass him. Again, Sword lacking some of that safety on the Orianna that he might have had in the previous 2 games. Winthrop, though, it's still just a composition style that we've seen them play out incredibly well over the course of this series. We cannot discount the fact that I think Winthrop has just straight up been the better team. So we need to just see electrifying 5v5s from UST in this one.
And at least it seems to me that they've decided to go a different direction, right? They're not trying to go back to the same game plan that is, not worked out for them over the past 2 games. Every single loss, they're trying to adjust, try to find something that's truly working for them. It results in some picks being the same, like Trevor's Rakan, for instance, or the Victor for Bradley, but maybe some other differences that can help them get that win. And it starts with just 1 win to go on that long path for a reverse sweep. It would be very challenging for UST to try and get there, but it starts right here, right now, in this matchup. Otherwise, it's going to be them heading home and Winthrop getting 1 more best of 5 to try to send themselves to Raleigh.
And Grapes, I need to bring it up as we load onto the Rift. We've talked a lot about a certain rivalry that could be looming in the lower bracket final. Maryville favored in their matchup against Ole Miss on this stream immediately following this series. And we've seen Winthrop and Ole Miss split games series in and series out. Maybe the Eagles just want to see some old friends in the lower bracket final. UST, they're going to need to do it 3 games in a row if they want to reach that point. Their road to Raleigh getting thinner and thinner. But at the very least, it does still exist. An unpaved road, perhaps, but one winding through the woods that they may be able to make it out. The one problem I do have for UST with this composition, Grapes, to talk a bit more about the game, is they don't have push in any of their lanes early on. UST, their bottom lane, after level 3, going to struggle to get push into the Xayah lane, and then Bradley and Porsche just not going to be able to shove out into the Orianna and Gnar early on.
And what that can mean for somebody like Wilson on this inside that's worked so well for him all series long. He's gotten 3 straight games of it. In NACL, where Winthrop are also playing, you don't get to do that. You only get to lock in that champion once, and then you're done with it after that. Now in this non-fearless format, he has lanes to play around, and certainly has been able to impact Sword the most. I think that's been the biggest beneficiary so far for Winthrop. Sword alongside Wilson, that's been the duo that they've consistently played around going into the back half of this season. And sometimes it has been met with ire and problems set up for them, but today it's leading to success.
I mean, the biggest thing is that they have just not given up the Bradley game, if you will, right? They've not let this guy that has 1v9'd many games over the course of his career take over. And again, so much credit needs to go over to this Winthrop mid jungle. I think Wilson too, we saw in game 2, he didn't really play around Sword as much. He played around Denethor, and he got Denethor really big, and we saw the 4-man Gnar in the team fight that won Winthrop the game. And that's the power of Winthrop, is even though we talk about like Denethor mobility, maybe some of the most talented guys on this team, they've got
an incredible amount of talent everywhere, and we know that they can carry anywhere. And we've really gotten to see that in this series and throughout their run in CLOL 2025.
We've talked a lot about a player like Wilson, who's gone by many a name, but has always been a top jungler kind of in this space, but has never really been able to get to that absolute pinnacle, to claim a championship.
He's got a runner-up curse.
Yeah, I mean, the lands and stuff like that has worked out for Winthrop. That's been the opportunities for them to succeed. But honestly, his results similar to just what Winthrop is overall, and they want to put a stop to that. They want to try to find a kill onto Bradley as Wilson comes in level 3 and chunks him down to 200 HP.
Yeah, I mean, Bradley doesn't lose any summoners, but he loses so much HP. He's going to be forced to base and TP pretty shortly. And again, it's just pressure, not allowing the UST mid laner to play the way that he wants. But Grapes, also circling back to, you know, Winthrop not being able to win championships and stuff like that over the years, I think there's been a lot of questions of, like, now in basically the 3rd year of this mobility Denethor Artemis era of Winthrop University, you know, there's been questions about, like at what point does Winthrop not stick with these guys, right? At what point is success just not going to come to them? At what point do they fall off? But it feels like the Golden Eagles are always able to surge at certain moments, and maybe just doing that right now. And it's always great to see a team that, you know, despite their struggles, they've stuck together over the years. They've worked through thick and thin, and especially in collegiate, you know, getting a degree all the while, being in person together, true teammates on the side of Winthrop.
Yeah, that's one of the differences between collegiate and, you know, some of the pro teams that we see in North America, is that, you know, once you're signed here, you are kind of a part of the team for the long run, right? And maybe some people come in to replace certain pieces and things like that, but the core of Winthrop has stayed ever since, you know, that new version of the roster kind of joined the fray in 2023. So it's very cool to see them really stick to this, and watch them go through their ups and downs. And they might
2v2.
have another up right here onto the bot lane play. They force, again, the health bars out of Array and Trevor with that level advantage. And so Winthrop finding these micro advantages across the map.
Yeah, it is exhaust invested, but control over the wave is oftentimes worth one of those minor summoner spells for mobility and only 35. And this is exactly what we talked about. Good laning should dictate push. Now, it was Sword that did have to go back to base, although basing second. So, I mean, Winthrop just really happy, I think, with a pretty chill early game so far.
They'll be happy with this, but honestly, UST is going to be okay with this too, right? Because they really indexed into scaling for this draft specifically, most notably in the side laners that they decided to go for, opting to not necessarily give Porsche a winning lane or give Array a winning lane if it means that they can scale a little bit later on into this one. It's only 35. He's going to land that stun onto Array, forcing him to pop the barrier. He's going to jump away from the feathers to make sure that Blade Caller does not connect.
This is great trading, and it's going to give Wilson priority setup around this dragon already onto the map, or maybe an invade onto Kenvi.
There he goes. I mean,
okay, Kenvi pulled into the bush. Kenvi's actually out farming the Xin Zhao by quite a bit. I didn't see how that happened. I'm going to be honest. I mean, Wilson did spend some time in mid lane, but I don't think we've seen any other invades. So, I mean, just credit to Kenvi out farming his opposition.
Doing a good job for himself. Again, on the on the Wukong. Champion that maybe he's able to do a little bit more than that Sejuani in game number 2. I thought, you know, overall Kenvi played a decent Sejuani game, but never was able to find the difference-making fight to help UST come out on top. Now on the Wukong, we'll have the ability to dish out a little bit more damage, to have some resources maybe funneled into him, and to be a big threat in these team fights with that AoE Cyclone. But it looks like right now Winthrop are still going to be the ones in control of this bottom lane. After Array went for that reset, it's going to be Wilson starting up this dragon, taking it down, where the trade on the other side is going to be a reset up to the top side for Array, so they want to try to control this first spawn of Grubs.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, it's a pretty big mistake from UST. They reset second and thought, hey, we can do the dragon off of Winthrop's reset. And they were like, oh, shoot, no, we can't. So now they're going to be late getting to these Grubs. They're going to full swap just to try to get numbers up on that side before Winthrop can respond, because I think they've sort of realized the situation, but just sort of behind on this play does mean Winthrop should have time to match. Here comes mobility and only 35. And if Winthrop is able to contest these Grubs somewhat successfully, that is a massive early game advantage for the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, they're going to start this up right now. And they, despite the fact that they got the dragon, are the ones here on the play first. And I don't know if UST even want to
bad.
contest for this right now. We'll see how badly they dive in. It should at least be Winthrop getting one, and then we'll see from there. Oh, Kenby steals it away. Now going to go with the cycle. This could be the turnaround that UST needs here in this series, but a three-man shockwave comes through from Sword. Chucha trade in here from Porsche. It's going to find a big knockup, but will it be enough damage? Denethor finally drops as Array gets a reset in the Arcane Storm, draining down from Bradley. It is a 2-for-1 overall here in the fight, with the one grub secured here by UST, but the fight's not done just yet. Blade Call lands a mobility, but Porsche finds another knockup. They're not able to land any final fatal blows onto the big carries of Winthrop, and they will be able to escape with their lives.
Oh man, but Winthrop, they get two! And it's exactly as I said, any amount of success contesting these grubs is a win for them because they were the first ones to get an objective around that dragon. Sword, a three-man shockwave. It took everything from Porsche and UST to salvage the fight. At the end of the day, it ends up being a 2-for-1, but Winthrop, they're already just ahead.
They will be able to go back to this RUST and pick up the remainder of these grubs. So that is a small win for them. However, now you have a kill on a Wilson again, who's been so impactful on this Sinzao the whole series, and mobility gets on the board with a kill on the Xayah. Meanwhile, the one kill for UST went towards Porsche on his tank, which isn't the best situation. They had wanted it onto somebody like Array or Bradley, but you know, not
Hey man,
the worst
I've
case
seen some
overall here for
Scions
this.
never die. Like,
True.
you know, kills in Scion are a little scary.
I've seen it with my bare hands, you know, on the screen. But
That's true.
we'll
Hey,
see.
any champion that can make
also-
grapes look good is definitely
Hey,
a pretty broken one.
I was gonna say that I've never played against. I was gonna be humble, but now
Oh, okay. No, sorry. I had to dunk you. It's just the rules.
that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm not playing against Denethor. Is my statement here. It looks like Porsche actually going for a more 80-oriented build. Early Hullbreaker could allow for him to survive in this lane a little bit longer and be a bit more of a damage threat in this 1v1. Because one thing about this Scion-Gnar matchup is once the Gnar is exhausted, if you are able to chunk him out a little bit, you actually can win out on fights.
Yeah, and we'll see if they're able to do it. Man, Denethor up just a good amount of CS, though. At the very least, UST was able to get most of the grubs, so it really just is that kill and gold difference. But now Winthrop power play and towards bottom side. We talked about lane push.
Here goes Wilson and only 35. On to Kenvy they go. Nicely used W here by Kenvy to get away from that pulverize. The shockwave will land on the Wukong, but there's just not enough follow-up damage just yet for Winthrop. Mobility's arrived in the fight, but here comes Bradley. That gravity well has sequestered only 35 and put him straight into the arms of Array, who picks up the first kill. Now Wilson gets knocked up, but the UST do not want to continue the chase, so they just pick up the kill onto the cow.
Yeah, but Winthrop, a bit of a misstep and a good punish from St. Thomas as they were able to get their ducks in a row and defend the play. Kenvy, good job buying time. Wilson's still hanging around off the reset.
He's gonna be able to win out on this 1v1. Remember, Kenvy does not have that ultimate available anymore, and nobody on UST really in position to fight with him as a reset came through from both Trevor and Bradley. So it will be that blue buff steal away. A little bit of a small win here for Winthrop, but overall net negative, I would say, in that fight.
I will say, Kenvy was up like 3 camps before that neutral objective sequence, and now Wilson is up about 2.5 camps. So there has been a big swing in the CS. Oh, they found Trevor?
Should be all right. There's no shockwave here for Sword just yet as he used it in the bottom lane exchange. Trevor will be able to live to see another day. Heading back to base, resetting here for this dragon spawning in 40 seconds. Winthrop got the first one. They surely would like the second.
And they've got so many wards to be able to do it. Look at the bottom side of the map. It's lit up like a Christmas tree right now. And they got first item spikes on both Mobility and Wilson. Array's gotten there as well, but Bradley's first item spike is pretty fake. So, I mean, Winthrop feeling pretty strong about their position in this one. Gonna have first access to bottom wave as well.
USC actually maybe had the opportunity to get here first on a play. They push that wave mid,
Cool, Sword
and Wilson to respond, and they can't walk right there as the upgraded death ray from Bradley started to chunk him out just a little bit. It's going to be a while until the Victor fully gets up there and fully becomes that late game threat, but he started to dish out some damage right now. Trevor just very separated so far. Shockwave from Sword lands on a 2, and now UST going to be forced in. There's the Blade Caller coming in from Mobility, and Bradley is taken down, and the Feat of Warfare secured here for the Golden Eagles. Denethor joining the fight as well. They force Kenby back, and that should be the Dragon going over to Winthrop.
Bradley's a better man than me, Grapes, because I think Trevor just killed his mid laner. Oh, wait, Denethor just got him between the towers, so that's 2 for 0 for Winthrop, and they're going to get the dragon. Feat of Warfare. I mean, yeah, Trevor just killed his mid laner, man. He was overextended. He forced Bradley to backstep, and Sword with the freest shockwave of his life. Maybe Bradley could have flashed it, but, I mean, we just can't be doing that in an elimination game.
Only 35. Could be in some trouble here. The lethal tempo is proc. There's the buster shot.
Okay.
And there's one back here for Array. So the Tristana is starting to get fed. We'll see if it matters, though, in the long run, Hawk, as overall, University of St. Thomas are in a bit of a pickle. They're going to actually try to continue to single out the solo laners here. Wilson flashes over the wall to try to land some damage onto Bradley, but he gets stunned up here by the gravity well. Knockup will land onto Array, but they will be able to finally shut down the Xin Zhao. Denethor and Mobility cannot do enough damage as UST finally punch back.
This game's getting goofy. Winthrop, wait, what are we doing? Why are we diving between towers after we did the dragon? Guys, stop double dipping. Everyone sees you do it, and now no one wants a salsa, okay?
And you brought
UST,
the salsa, like you made it. Oh.
What is happening? Okay, Trevor's dead again. I'm so confused, man. Winthrop is up 5-4. And they're up 1,000 gold. UST, though, is at the very least punching back. It feels like a similar story to both game 1 and 2, where the early to mid game is somewhat contested, where Winthrop is making a couple of mistakes that are allowing UST to come back into it, but not large enough that UST has any semblance of an advantage. And obviously, Winthrop's still on the front foot overall.
Taking a look at some of these big item spikes. Sword does not have his first one yet. That Roa is still scaling for Bradley. It's actually a Titanic Hydra start for Porsche. He just wants to be able to match the wave clear that Denethor can be able to provide on the Gnar to get himself back into these fights as soon as possible, Hook. And right now, if you are UST, that is what you're looking for. Just trying to reset waves, set up situations where you can potentially wait for the late game, but that's not going to happen if you get solo killed again. Denethor with an RLT finds another one onto Bradley, and we're fighting around this second spawn of Grubs. It could be a 4v5 if Denethor gets here in time, but he does not have a teleport to join the party. So instead, it will be Winthrop just joining and controlling this side of the map as they pick up the first turret as well as the second spawn of Grubs.
I mean, Winthrop just winning on both sides of the map. Denethor in the 1v1, and then the rest of the squad in the 4v4. I think that's going to be feats of warfare, feats of strength, rather, going their way with their third neutral objective. And they got the feat of warfare. No one has tier 2. Oh, okay. No, they do. This, they got the feat of strength, and Winthrop up now 2,500 gold. UST, I feel like a broken record, Grapes. They have just not found the answers for Winthrop on the map.
It feels slightly more hopeful, and maybe this is Cope, Hawk, but hear me out. You see Array down there.
Cope.
The Yuntal's in. He's 2-0-2. Bradley has been able to do enough in some of these fights, and you know, I will say a lot of the reasons they're able to get kills is because of the fact that Winthrop are like making mistakes. But if they make enough more of those mistakes, the scaling for UST is much better than it has been.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. Like UST has more of a path to a win due to the composition this time, but I just feel like Winthrop is just playing better, you know, because I don't think UST has found any sort of game plan that can challenge the Golden Eagles. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to go more than 3 games, but I have unfortunately just not been impressed by the Celts, at least up to this point so far today. But I have seen Array and Bradley be heroes so many times over the course of their career. It could happen here again. To your point, Array in particular is on an item position to do so. But Winthrop, they are always just looking for the next moment. Onto the Rift Herald. It is UST, maybe cross-mapping on the bottom side towards Sword. He's respecting the threat.
Yeah, he might not go down, but it could be a tower going over, as could get Bradley some more kills, or some more gold, I should say. Sword already uses the flash. He throws the ball the wrong direction, but he's waiting for only 35 to arrive. The shockwave will find 2, but Sword will go down eventually as the shutdown finds the way of Bradley. So that is the first tower likely to be picked up for the side of UST, as well as a kill. However, it's being responded to up in the top side of the map. They get that tier 1 turret. Porsche is in some trouble. He has to stop a onslaught, but not a lot of HP to work with. The Soul Furnace Seal going to buy some time as the teleport comes in from Bradley. but it's not going to be any kills, any extra aggression. It will just be that one small kill that UST picked up for themselves.
Oh, mobility to get the mid lane tier 1 because Array over-rotated towards top, anticipating a fight. That's a really minute mistake that actually ends up being pretty big because I felt like Winthrop, or rather, sorry, UST actually won out on the play, able to find the kill on a sword as well as the flash and the tower in just trade for the turret with the Rift Herald being expended. But getting mid lane tier 1 as well on the back end, Array just has to have some poise and stand in the mid lane to defend it. Instead, that is 2 turrets going the way of Winthrop. Ultimately fairly even, and UST priority access to the Dragon.
And they're going to start it first. It would be great for them to deny Soul Point if UST are able to pick this up. But Winthrop know what is at stake here with this Dragon. They know what's at stake in this series. They don't want to potentially just give one over to UST for fun, both in terms of Dragon score and game score. So they're going to look here to start this one up. Only 35. Does have the Hex Flash to try to go over the wall. If anything could be over-positioned or over-exerted, and Winthrop will gain control of the pit.
And UST no way in. Kenby getting caught.
Shockwave does land. As the pulve lands on a 2, Kenby still has an
A lot of
opportunity to try to
resources.
get in for a steal, but it will be secured by mobility and Winthrop. Arcane Storms comes out. Bradley at the flash over the wall. Trevor at the quickness. Will try to go in on Denethor, but then our ultimate only finding 2. He jumps over the wall. Will be able to survive for now. The wall up does not land a stun, but the
saved
Buster
him.
shot comes out too early, and Denethor has been sent to his own safety.
Trevor?
Here comes Trevor, and here come UST. Array jumps over the wall. This could be the last-ditch effort fight coming in from the Celts, from their 2-time CLOL champions, but it just might not be enough. Array not able to get into the fight, and mobility takes down Porsche. Kenby finally going down to Wilson. He's 1v5ing up in the backline of UST. The Xin Zhao still unstoppable, but Sword doesn't have any mana. How can Wilson go over the wall? He flashes in, trying to find something, gets knocked up though. Will it be enough damage from the carries of UST? It will be going to be a 2-kill fight picked up here in that extended skirmish, as UST do get themselves a slight advantage.
Oh, Sword gonna TP out and make it, but UST, it's a 4 for 3, but they lose the Dragon. We have seen echoes, shades of what the team fighting potentially could be. Heroics from Trevor, Array, and Bradley to salvage some sort of a fight. And it could only get better from here. A lot of resources invested from Winthrop on the front end. Denethor giving quite a bit of the health bar, as well as the Shockwave going down. Great flash from Bradley to buy time. And Winthrop, they make the right call pretty quickly, which is run for the hills. But Trevor sends it into everybody. Choke point be damned. Mobility is able to cook as a result of the location of the fight, but UST simply has enough resources. The critical thing as things break down here is that Sword runs out of mana. So as Wilson goes forward, mobility can't follow because Bradley one-shots him. Only 35 is 2 away, and the Orianna cannot contribute any longer.
And so with that, it is another fight that slightly tilts towards UST, but Winthrop pick up the Dragon, they pick up that Soul Point, and they do get a couple of kills back as well, most notably on the mobility on the Xayah, but looks like UST, they want to continue to fight here. They're going in on only 35. They will take him down through that unstoppable onslaught. But here comes Porsche. She's teleported in. Wilson dashing forward as well. They knock up the Xin Zhao. Here comes that Sion going in with the ulti. They will not be able to take down Wilson, though. And Denethor hits Mega and will gnar Porsche straight into the wall. Wilson gets another, and Winthrop right back on top.
UST does have some ability to stat check. Wait,
Sword.
he's getting wailed on.
Very far forward onto Bradley as his Seraph shield does get popped. But Winthrop now turning their sights towards the Otacon. It's both Denethor and Wilson going to be able to try to take that down as a 2-man unit, with the carries for Winthrop holding down the line in mid.
Grapes, we're seeing the tankiness and late game damage of UST start to pay dividends, as only 35 does get burned down, and Porsche took a long time to die, but Xin Zhao is so OP! Wilson bought an absurd amount of time with the Crescent Guard, ends up not going down despite getting nearly one shot, and Winthrop ends up winning the fight 2-1. But the Celts, they're in this game, Grapes. For the first time, I feel that they are alive, down only 2,500 at 21.5.
And they have the items starting to scale up. Most notably, Array has gotten big. Bradley's gotten big. I mean, this is how we've seen USC win games that maybe they shouldn't have won, like composition-wise, or how the early game went in the past, in CLOL, in their lower bracket runs so far. It's just the fact that Array and Bradley could just be a little bit better than their oppositions. I mean, these guys have such storied histories, even against players like Mobility and Sword. You can definitely see worlds where this Victor, this Tristana can come online, and that moment is now. There's no time like the present. Bradley has his Broa fully stacked, and UST going to have to make some sort of play soon, because they do know that that Dragon is spawning in a minute. It would be Soul for Winthrop.
2 fed hyper carries against the Soaring Flock, and let's not count out the carries of Winthrop either. Mobility, battle of the 80 carries this game is going to continue to be electric. Sword finds Trevor.
He's going to mark Sword, send him away with the quickness, but now Trevor could be out of position. He charms up Wilson to make sure he cannot land that audacious charge.
Otacon's doing so much.
6,000 HP. It is taken down relatively low, but it's bought enough time for Winthrop to join the fight to potentially turn this into a 50-50 situation. I don't know if UST want to continue to finish this one enough. Trevor just gets singled out. He tried to go for a flank, but he gets completely collapsed upon. And now Wilson goes forward with the Crescent Guard. Can Array and Bradley do the work here? The Arcane Storm not going to stop him as the Ruinous Otacon is picked up by Winthrop. And now they're looking for another extension of the fight. Bradley gets knocked up. Kenvi gets taken down. Winthrop University completely dismantle UST at the seams. Bradley the lone survivor, but he won't be for long. It's a double kill in for Sword and the ace for Winthrop.
A lack of decisiveness around objectives is the Achilles heel for the University of St. Thomas yet again. As Trevor gets picked, the rest of the team gets torn apart, and the Eagles sink their talons deeper into this game. We said UST was alive, but maybe not against a 6,000 gold deficit.
Taking a look at that fight here, Hawk, as again, Trevor, we don't even get to see Trevor because he just died off screen. And then Wilson just running so much value.
What's Trevor doing? He didn't go with the team. And then UST, by this point, it's way too late. They needed to peel off the Otacon sooner. They did not. And Winthrop with full health bar, full resources, is way too easily able to end this fight. UST just has to be able to pull the trigger. That has been their problem the entire series, and they could not do it. And now they just might be too far behind. Mobility is 3 items, 6, 1, and 5 on the Xayah. I think the door is closed.
Yeah, plus that Mountain Soul. Gonna make it even harder for UST to burst down some of these backline carries. And they are now clasping on to their last potential hope. It had to be a reverse sweep, and now it has to be a comeback here in game number 3 to start that reverse sweep. It might not happen. 2-man Gnar back in, actually just onto Kenvi, but that might be all that they need. The Wukong is down, and Winthrop will continue the push down the bottom lane.
And Winthrop, I mean, they don't have a Baron, but they do have some Void Grubs to answer for. Just trying to push it. I don't think they can end. Should be at least an inhibitor coming out. Array is pushing at bottom. It is an objective bounty.
He's going very aggressively onto Trevor because he knows that nobody can follow up on it. Array is still away from the fight. That is a large chunk of the damage that USC have at their disposal in this composition. It's already inhibitor down in the bottom lane. Mid lane inhibitor turret under fire as well. Bradley is still here. He's wave clearing a lot with the death ray, and finally Kenvi will come back up. But Porsche getting singled out. Should not have been underneath that tower. Should have just let it die, man. And now Winthrop once again with that 4v5 on the map.
Array is at least back to help defend, but it ends up being 2 inhibitors going down. Hope that gold on the tier 2 was worth it, as UST's base mortally wounded. And it's the 2 best inhibitors to have down if you are playing for a Baron. Winthrop, they can take their reset, they can push out top lane, and they can take full control of the jungle before starting up this objective. And I don't think there's going to be any defense for the Celts. Or they could just start it. Why not?
Why not? Exactly, because if you force a fight, you probably win that at this point. Only 35's coming back from base, and USC know they need to contest this Baron. Otherwise, the game will just end with 2 inhibitors already down. Kenvi going forward, dashing in on to Denethor, but there's just no damage to be done. In comes that Mega Gnar. There's a 3-man shockwave from Sword, and Bradley is going to be taken down by Wilson, who's now on a killing spree. In the backline goes Porsche. He's a Scion, so does not do any sort of damage, and Array is out of the picture. Fight over. Series over, and the hill has been rocked. Winthrop teleporting the base of UST, and are going to take the series against the 2-time champs.
South Florida, Minnesota, St. Clair, Northwood, Western, and now add UST to the list. Winthrop is 1 series away from making it to Raleigh.
Just the lower finals remain, as it is a 3-0 sweep for Winthrop University. They lost to UST in the lower finals in South Conference 3 years ago, but they'll get their payback in due time. There's the win, and Winthrop are moving on.
I mean, get your throps out, as that is the kind of series you want to see out of your Golden Eagles if you're looking to make a CLOL championship happen. An incredible series from Winthrop, one-sided from start to finish. I mean, any moment in which it felt like UST might be able to come back into things, Winthrop just slammed the door shut.
What a game it was for them. There were some hopes for UST. I mean, again, shout out to this organization who it did announce that the program likely will not be continuing, at least in its current form, after this calendar year, after this academics year. But for them, it just was not the series. It was not the day, as they do fizzle out of this competition in 4th position, which, you know, for many organizations, for many teams, for many schools, that would be considered a success. Not necessarily for UST. They definitely wanted a better showing than what they ended up getting.
Yeah, I mean, they should be proud of what they've put together over the last 4 years, regardless. Again, worst showing in program history being 4th place. Not too bad. 2 championships in that amount of time as well. But I do agree with you. You know that these players wanted more, but it was just not their day. They did not have the coordination to contend with Winthrop. And the sunsetting of one of the great programs, but Winthrop, now their best placement since their championship in 2021. They want to rise back to the top. They await the loser of our next series, Ole Miss versus Maryville. And I mean, Grapes, again, Ole Miss not favored in that series later today. We might just get one of 2 matches, either the greatest rivalry in League of Legends right now, Winthrop versus Ole Miss, or we get the old rivalry, Maryville and Winthrop. These 2 schools hate each other, in the words of Odd Orange, for a chance at Raleigh. I mean, what a story it will be to follow.
And again, the added stakes to this for Winthrop is they lost their first series of the tournament. They dropped down to the lower bracket. Everybody was counting them out, saying that, oh, there's no chance here for Winthrop anymore after they, got smacked around by Western. Let's put it as it is. But now they go on that lower bracket run, and they end up coming out ahead here, locking themselves a spot in the top 3. And if they win one more series, I mean, think about the pressure it would be for them to try to finish this job off, to win their first title in 4 years.
I mean, oh man, it's going to be insane. This team looks like a completely different team than what they were just a couple weeks ago. And I mean, what a time to soar. And now one more series before they can complete their road to Raleigh. That's where all eyes are set. And Winthrop, they're looking like the hungriest team right now.
Yeah, I'm sure Maryville has something to say about that as well. They also haven't won a title in a while, and they certainly are going to want to be able to do that. Even Ole Miss, looking for their best performance in program history here, Hawk. But let's talk about our MVP for the day. I think it has to go towards Wilson in the jungle on that Xin Zhao. Just the difference that he was able to provide in all 3 games on this pick and opening up the map for the rest of his team, especially against somebody like Kenvi, who has such a storied history in the collegiate space, or just in the semi-pro space as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson had an amazing series. Look, 3 games of Xin Zhao. It's funny. His player card says, what do I want to be remembered for? Sejuani duty. Well, I got bad news for you, Wilson. You're going to be remembered for Xin Zhao duty, as he was just fantastic from start to finish in these games, leading the charge in the team fights, putting a lot of pressure on Bradley in early stages. Great neutral objective control. It's just kind of exactly what you want out of a jungle series from your jungler. He just kind of did everything and was definitely the biggest piece in Winthrop's dominant win here today.
Yeah, and shout out to Wilson, of course, for kind of, being the target of some criticism in the space, especially, when you had some of the struggles that Winthrop were facing. He did not have his pop performances throughout the entire season. There were definitely moments where, the rest of the team was able to look a little bit better. But in these moments, think about a player like Wilson who has finished 2nd place at so many NACLQs, so many promotion tournaments, so many CLOL championships as well. I mean, it would be fitting for him to end up on top at the end of it.
Oh, it truly would be. And the beauty of it is now, I think now for Winthrop being at worst third place, I think they can be very happy with their CLOL season. Now I feel like they're playing with house money against who most people expected to be the top two or the top three alongside UST perhaps. They've beaten one of those teams. They're moving on to third. You know that these players absolutely want to go higher, but I mean, they should be extremely proud of what they've been able to do. It is not a disappointment of a season for Winthrop like it perhaps may have been last
You
year.
know, we say that because of our expectations, right? From what we think about the players and whatever our analysis going into the season. But for them, I feel like they still want
absolutely.
that championship, right?
They absolutely want a ring. They're not done.
Especially because it's been like year number 2 or 3 of this core, Denethor Mobility, been there since 2023. Then they added Trickster and Sword, or Wilson and Sword, only 35 coming in this year. So some slight adjustments every single season, but in general, the core kind of remaining the same. And this Winthrop team, they've had success in different events, like they won NACE last year, they won the 66 games, they've won HuFest multiple times, but it feels like for them, their next hurdle is really conquering the CLO championship, and that would be such a fitting way to wrap up or put a bow onto this core, this arc of what this roster has brought to the university.
And just imagine the year in which everyone might have been out on this team is the year in which they do the unthinkable. I mean, come on, you can't get better than that. But there's always something to be said for, the band of brothers coming together to climb the mountain one last time. And I mean, this team is going to be so fun to watch. A reminder for everyone, the lower bracket final, same time, same place tomorrow at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Winthrop awaiting the loser of Ole Miss Maryville, happening immediately following this series right here on twitch.tv/UniEsportsNA.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have time to pull up the bracket once again, at maybe the upper bracket, so we just or the lower bracket, kind of whatever is available, so we can kind of preview that matchup as well a little bit, Hawk, because Maryville and Ole Miss, these teams faced off against each other in the NACL, albeit under different pseudonyms. It was Dark Zero Dragonsteel up against Supernova, but it was the Maryville iteration of that roster winning 2-0. However, different roster now for Maryville. They have Shimmer coming in to play that jungle position, and if you ask anybody on Ole Miss, they believe that that could be an opportunity for them to potentially make this a competitive series.
Not only that, but we all know that Ole Miss is unleashed in CLOL. So I'm expecting this one to be a competitive series. I definitely do think Maryville's still the favorites in this one. Soul Laners, Zamudo, and Spyrax. They've been having a great 2025, UG or not, and that I do not expect to change.
Yeah, that should be a really fun time. Hopefully this is an exciting, this is a close series, because we had our 3-0, which is nice in some ways because it shows the domination of a team like Winthrop, right? But if this series is close, it's going to be super exciting, and even if it's not, that lower finals that's going to be happening tomorrow, Hawk, it's going to be intense.
It absolutely is. I mean, there are only good series remaining between these teams. Top 3 having been established. The question is just going to be in what order. And the biggest question, who is going to Raleigh? Still, I believe, waiting on our interview. Not going to have MVP Wilson joining us here today, but we will, when it comes up, have the support of Winthrop University. Only 35. Grapes, we've been talking about it. This guy's been outspoken since joining this team, and it's been so damn fun to watch. I believe we got that one ready right now.
Let's pull it up. What's up? Only 35. Oh, we got the shades.
He's got the
Looking
shades.
Good. Where are you looking?
I don't know.
Right
Hello. I'm looking. Where are we gonna play?
You're
I
looking
feel
up
like we
towards
didn't
North
even
Carolina,
play. Yeah.
right? Potentially Raleigh.
Exactly.
Right up,
Yeah.
right north.
Yeah.
Congratulations, only 35. I know we got to
Thank
talk a little bit earlier, but you said you guys are feeling confident going into this series,
Mhm.
but were you expecting it to be a 3-0 per se?
Not really. But I guess maybe they're not putting their time on league anymore, Maybe they are focused on school now more. Yeah. But I was expecting at least 3-1.
I see. Well, I mean, hey, exceeding expectations. You got the win nonetheless. And maybe it's not just in part to them, but only 35. Maybe it's your team, because Grapes and I have been talking about how you all have over the last week or so been looking like a completely different team. Do you want to shed some light on how you feel that your team has kind of grown towards the back half of this tournament and continue to improve?
I think the breakpoint for us was the Nice line final, because I don't know how, but seeing Tails face to face helped the team a lot. Seeing the beautiful his face increase our gameplay. Boom, skyrocket in 1 week. I actually don't know, but something happened in Nice, I think. You know, after
Just the
that we
in-person
become
experience,
really
right?
demons. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys were able to take a game off of Maryville in that series on
Yeah.
stage. I
Yeah.
saw you were repping the
That-
Turkish flag, which was very cool too.
Yeah, take. I mean, I guess it built us confidence, or maybe we start reading meta better. It can be everything.
Yeah. I mean, now looking ahead as well, lower bracket finals tomorrow. You guys got the loser of Ole Miss Maryville, both familiar rivals of yours. Do you have anything you want to say about potential matchups in that lower bracket finals?
Who do you think you're gonna play?
I think whoever comes, we're gonna trio again. I don't think it will be
Yeah.
hard.
Hell yeah.
Any thoughts of who you think is gonna be? Any predictions for the fans?
I mean, I feel like 75% Maryville is gonna win, but it's League of Legends. You never know. Maybe Shoga will pull his Draven and get the double X's on Sajet, you know?
Hey, that's
never
a
know.
potential option. I'll tell the next caster
Yeah.
crew to keep an eye on that. Just, you got the previous scouting coming in. Only 35, a pleasure once again. If you guys do want to hear some further conversations that we did have, you can check out my Twitter account where we did have a bit of an extended talk over there as well. But before we let you go, any shout outs that you want to give to the people out there on the show before we transition on to our next series?
I will shout out to Pilskar. Thank you for his support. He always
Yes!
watches.
Yes.
We love Pilskar.
We
Thank
love
you so much,
Pilskar
Only
here.
35.
Yeah, thanks again, Only 35. An absolute pleasure again getting to speak with him. Dude, that's exactly what I want to see after just smoking someone 3-0. That is good spirits heading into the game tomorrow.
I'm so excited to see this Winthrop team continue their run tomorrow into that lower bracket final. It's going to be a great best of 5 regardless of who ends up, being the matchup against them. And speaking of, if you want to figure out who that's going to be, you just got to stay tuned right here on the UniEsportsNA stream, as we've got Rolf and Alkbattery coming in to cover our upper bracket final as we punch our first ticket to NC State. Will it be the Maryville University dynasty continuing, or will it be Ole Miss making their first ever trip to a LAN CLOL finals? We'll be back with that series right after this.